It's the first day of your long-awaited trip to the Amazon forest. You flew all the way to South America. More specifically, you landed in the city of Manaus. It's the heart of the Brazilian Amazon. So far, you've traveled by air, car, and now water. You are on a tiny boat, moving through the dark waters of the Amazon River. Yes, the river is also called the Amazon. And just FYI, it's the second longest river in the world. It loses only to the Nile River in Egypt. The Amazon sprawls for an impressive 2,700 square miles, beginning in Peru and ending only when it meets the Atlantic Ocean off the coast of Brazil. To get a closer look at the forest, you decide to start by exploring it by boat. First up, you watch some piranha fishing. You can even try to catch one yourself if you like. As you may know, piranhas are carnivorous fish that inhabit the Amazon River, so it might not be your best option to go swimming in these waters. One of the most emblematic species of alligators present in the Amazon River basin is the broad-snouted caiman. It looks pretty much like a regular alligator, except for the fact that it has a yellow chin. Your guide leaves the boat and searches the water to show you a caiman up close. He also tells you of another legendary creature that lives in the dark waters of the river, the pink dolphin. Lucky you get to witness a family of pink dolphins showing their fins near your boat. They look magical from the place where you're sitting. You've probably never known dolphins can be pink, huh? After a few mesmerizing moments, you discover that the dolphin's pink color is nothing but an illusion. The animals are originally pinkish-gray, but due to the brown colors of the Amazon River, they look vivid pink when you stare at them from above. Your guide tells you that the pink dolphin is a central character of Brazilian folklore. Locals believe that the pink dolphins can turn into humans and wander off into towns at night. You get off your boat near one of the entrances to the forest. Now you're going to continue your trip on foot. Your guide says that you are venturing into very dangerous terrain. The Amazon is home to some of the creepiest species of wildlife on the globe, but don't worry, we'll get to see a lot of them today. You've come prepared, of course. Bug spray, a raincoat, and your sharp eyes. Inside the jungle, you need to be alert at all times. You may have heard legends of the anaconda, a snake that can swallow animals as big as a cow in one go. Sorry to break it to you, but those are not just legends. Reptiles like these do actually exist. They live deep in the jungle. It right there, moving between the trees. Is it a spider? The so-called Goliath bird-eater is a monster spider. Its legs can grow up to a foot in length, and the spider itself can weigh around 6 ounces. It's also known as the king of tarantulas. You shouldn't get too close, of course. It's not venomous to humans, but its bite can surely sting. As its name suggests, the Goliath bird-eater can even eat birds, as long as they are smaller than it is. Up next, you run into another species of spider that draws your attention. This one is so tiny that you almost don't see it. It's known by the popular name of the decoy spider. You see one of its creations, a gigantic spider built by the tiny Cyclosa spider in order to scare off large predators. This is as amazing as it is creepy. A spider that uses the remains of other insects and dry leaves to create the image of a large spider on its web. If it fools predators, perfect! But to us humans, this work of art looks almost endearing. Who knew there were artists in the arachnid world? Near a small lake, you witness a unique scene. A large snake is slowly slithering its way toward a lizard that is resting on a rock. The lizard seems obvious to the presence of the dangerous reptile, but right as the snake is preparing to attack, the lizard flies the scene in its iconic way. The so-called basilisk lizard is famous for its ability to walk on water, or rather run across the water. This isn't an illusion, just a matter of balancing. The small lizard moves its legs on top of the water very fast, while its long tail serves as a counterweight. I wish I could do that. If you've ever wondered what a frog looks like on the inside, you've come to the right place. Right in front of your eyes, there is a rare local species of frog. It's known as the glass frog. This species of amphibian has a type of transparent skin that is completely see-through. In other words, you can see the frog's interior with astounding clarity. It's as if you had X-ray vision. Moving on with your journey, soon you come across a pond. Floating on its water is probably the biggest water lily you've ever seen in your life. These huge plants are also known as the Victoria Amazonica. They can measure up to 8 feet across and hold the weight of a grown-up person. But I wouldn't recommend trying to climb on it if I were you. Just cause, you know, it's the Amazon forest we're talking about. The wildlife here is amazing, but the forest itself is also a sight. There are over 80,000 species of plants and trees grown in the Amazon rainforest. In fact, you can find 10% of all the world's wildlife in this jungle. An estimated 400 billion trees grow on the gigantic area the forest occupies. Of course, this place is bound to be biodiverse, right? You won't be able to witness this phenomenon during your trip, but your guide tells you about a unique species of tree that is famous for being able to walk. Yep, you've heard correctly. There are walking trees in the Amazon rainforest. They don't have legs or anything like that, but they do move around in search of better lighting conditions. The Amazon canopy is so thick that only 1% of sunlight can reach the forest floor. Because of this, some trees end up getting less sunlight than others. The so-called walking palm trees seem to be adapted to this situation. They grow new roots, which helps them move for 1 to 2 inches per day. They can walk up to 65 feet per year. Maybe that's what inspired John Ronald Reuel Tolkien to create ants, huh? Those are pretty similar tree beings that roam freely around the world. I kid you not, it's not only wildlife that inhabits the Amazon. Actually, over 30 million people live in the forest. And there are also ancient settlements that scientists believe to have been thriving there. And I'm not talking about El Dorado, that's just a myth. But in 2018, a groundbreaking study showed that up to 1 million people probably inhabited the Amazon, between 1250 and 1500 CE. Can you imagine that? Working alongside local indigenous people, researchers from the University of Florida found several mounds in the Amazon. Besides these mounds, they also discovered interesting ditches and geoglyphs. After mapping all of these recurring mounds, scientists understood that this was a sign of an ancient settlement. They found remnants of carefully designed walls centered around plazas. This could only mean that these ancient cities were big and could host hundreds of thousands of people. These findings brought back the idea that the Amazon could have been home to thriving civilizations way before the Europeans arrived there. But rather than cities drenched in gold, they were simply well-developed agricultural societies.
Hey, how do you feel about taking a trip back in time? We're diving into the history of the Amazon forest to unravel the mystery of its lost cities. Grab your bug spray and hop on. The Amazon forest is the world's largest rainforest. The environment there can be extremely challenging for human life. Yet, the legend goes that the Amazon has been home to sprawling settlements, rich in unmeasurable wealth. Could that really be true? Or is that none other than a figment of our collective imagination? The legend of El Dorado might be the myth that started this whole thing. As European explorers began their excavations in American lands back in the 1500s, word got out of an Amazonian civilization that used to paint their leader in gold as an offering to higher powers. The legend of El Hombre Dorado, aka the Golden Man, began to quickly spread around Europe. Explorers got excited at the possibility of finding an infinite amount of gold somewhere deep within the Latin American jungle. And as you can imagine, expeditions to the continent began to multiply with each passing year. It didn't take long before explorers found this civilization. They were known as the Muisca people and were located in Colombia, near Lake Gudavia. The Muisca people had a tradition of painting their leader, aka the Zipa, from head to toe in gold. In a ceremonial gesture, the Zipa would swim into the river, spreading gold dust all over the lake. For the Muisca, this was their way of acknowledging and thanking the higher powers of the universe they believed in. When European explorers heard and witnessed this practice, they were amazed. For them, gold was used solely for commercial purposes as their main currency for trade. This made them think that the Muisca people must have stacks and stacks of gold hidden somewhere in the jungle for them to use it so abundantly. Well, that's how the legend of El Dorado was born. What was once the practice of El Hombre Dorado traveled on word of mouth until it became El Dorado, a fictional city that was most likely to hide piles of gold. The hunt for this city led Europeans to spend large amounts of money to scour the Amazon forest. Unfortunately, all of their expeditions came back empty-handed. That is, if they ever came back at all. Now, jump to the beginning of the 1900s. In England, the Royal Geographic Society, a prestigious British institution, was looking for somebody willing to travel down to Latin America to trace the border between Brazil and Bolivia. More specifically, the part of the border that is nestled deep within the Amazon rainforest. One Sir Percy Fawcett was a Latin American aficionado, and he gladly volunteered to do the job. Oh, it's important to note that the Amazon forest is virtually the size of the continental USA. It sprawls across 8 countries, including Brazil, Peru, and Bolivia. And trust me, getting around is no easy feat. The jungle is covered in dense vegetation, and in addition to that, it's home to insane predators such as anaconda snakes, panthers, crocodiles, piranhas, and so on. But despite all that, Fawcett was very successful in his mapping adventure and seemed to be wanting to come back more. Back in England, Fawcett would scour diaries from other explorers hoping to learn more about the ancient Amazonian civilizations. He would read about the Incas and the Mayans and the great empires they built. He believed that if the Incas were capable of building empires that stretched over 2 million square miles, this could mean that other Amazonian civilizations could have thrived there too. During his research, Fawcett came across a report from a 16th century explorer. The report told of a city deep within the Amazon forest that held unimaginable quantities of minerals. A town that stretched for 15 miles without any space from a house to house. This report fueled Fawcett's imagination to a new extreme. From then on, he became obsessed with finding what he called the lost city of Z. Over years, Fawcett searched the Amazon forest, usually looking for stone ruins that could possibly indicate human settlements. On his later expeditions, he focused on exploring the state of Mato Grosso in central Brazil. He would travel from Europe and into the lower region of the Xingu River. The trip to the Xingu would take him around 14 days on foot. Then, he would set sail in small wooden boats accompanied by local indigenous leaders that knew the region better than anyone. How he communicated with the indigenous population is still a mystery, since they only spoke in local dialects. Some scientists believe that this could have been the real reason why he never found the city. They believed he wasn't able to communicate what exactly he was looking for. And this was not his greatest difficulty. As we've said before, Amazon is not a kind place for its visitors. In his diaries, Fawcett tells of encounters with a 60-foot-long anaconda, which he bravely survived. He writes of endless sleepless nights and waking up with his hands and feet swollen from mosquito bites. Some of his peers said he was invincible and tireless, but the day came during his 8th expedition when he didn't make it back home. Fawcett disappeared without leaving any trace behind. Some even suspect that he was close to reaching his lifelong goal. On the day of his disappearance, he sent an optimistic letter to his wife saying there was nothing to fear, and that he was setting out on a certain final search. Fawcett's failed attempt to find ruins seemed to support what had become a consensus among experts at the time: that this rainforest was too inhospitable to support large, complex societies, let alone cities. Experts were convinced that the Amazon's lost cities were nothing more than fiction. That is, until the 1960s, when modern research began to find evidence that suggested otherwise. Scientists discovered patches of extremely fertile soil. They called it Black Earth. And apparently, they found lots of it in the Amazon, especially alongside rivers. Further research even showed that such soil was created by human waste or the intentional burning of forests, which adds nutrients to the soil below, which could only mean bingo! The discovery of Black Earth was the evidence that large-scale agriculture was possible and probably did exist amidst the Amazon, confirming that settlements could have formed there after all. In the 1990s, along the Xingu River in Brazil, a team of archaeologists from the University of Florida made a remarkable discovery. Working alongside local indigenous people, they found very long ditches. After mapping them, they realized that these ditches were a sign of a big settlement. They were remnants of carefully designed walls centered around a plaza. Some were roads that led to more settlements. In fact, just this part of the Amazon, about the size of New Jersey, was once a network of dozens of settlements that experts believe could have been home to at least 50,000 people between 1250 and 1650 CE. Other discoveries were possible thanks to LiDAR imaging, a type of technology that allows researchers to take satellite pictures of the forest's ground without having to step inside of it. A network of trenches in Acre, Brazil, dates back to 200 to 1200 CE. These suggest settlements that could have supported 60,000 people. Other images from near the Xingu River suggest cities that could have housed about 50 million people. These were the lost cities of the Amazon. Believe it or not, these images suggest that Fawcett was very close to a major discovery. He was looking for the ruins in the right place, but he was looking for the wrong thing. Unlike cities such as Cusco, which used stone as their primary material, Amazonian settlements used wood and earth to build their cities. These materials are highly deteriorating and probably decomposed over time. Finding them required a bit more technology than what Fawcett had available at his time.
You're strapped in a boat cruising down the Amazon River with the sun scorching hot. As you check out your map, your boat starts rocking back and forth. The water is starting to get more intense, so you hang on for dear life. You tuck your map in your pocket and try to take control of your boat. You strike some jagged rocks and duck low to avoid tree branches. Your boat strikes a large rock out of nowhere and capsizes. You're swimming in the murky green water. While you're trying your best to get ashore, your boat gets washed away. Underneath the water lies a whole new world of bizarre and dangerous animals. Candiru fish are snake-like creatures that can grow up to 16 inches long. Arapimus can weigh more than an adult male and are taller than most basketball players. They're the biggest freshwater fish in South America. They have a hybrid gill system that forces them to pop up to the surface every 5 to 15 minutes to breathe in oxygen for their large swim bladder. You swim out of the raging water and dry yourself off. Oh no, your map is completely soaked. There's no way you can get to your destination without it. You venture into the thick rainforest, shoving the branches and leaves away. As you get deeper, you notice something on a tree. It's barely moving, but it's got sharp claws and a raggedy coat. It stretches its arm to another branch and tries to pull itself up, ever so slowly. Sloths sleep more than half their days and only head down from trees once a week. They're so motionless, they sometimes grow algae and moss on their fur. The rainforest gets denser with each step until there's barely any sunlight illuminating the path in front of you. You notice a figure following you. With every branch you step on, you can hear a faint sound right next to you creeping around. You start walking a bit faster, and the sound catches up with you. You make it out of the dense part and tread along a narrow path until you reach a cliff. You can't walk normally here, so you pin against the wall and walk sideways to cross the hills. You slowly move across with the river 30 feet below you. You move your right foot, and some rocks fall into the river. You keep going, and misstep. You're about to fall, but you hold on to a large tree branch and pull yourself up. You notice a couple of colorful poison frogs inches away from your fingers. Touching any of these frogs can be extremely dangerous and harmful, despite their amazing color patterns. The golden poison frog is one of the most poisonous animals in the world. One of them hops right next to you, so you let go of the branch and fall back in the river. The river is washing you down until you reach a calm current. Underneath you is a swarm of piranhas swimming with their sharp teeth. The red color on their skin is unmistakable, so you swim off like an Olympic athlete. Piranhas will eat anything that gets in their way, no matter the size. You grip onto a log and climb up a small rock to catch your breath. There's a huge electric eel underneath the rock. Despite their name, they're more related to catfish than eels. They use their powerful 600 volts of electricity to defend themselves and catch food. You're stuck, unless you're like the common basilisk that can run on the water like a jet ski. These incredible lizards have special webbing on their toes and can run the distance of a basketball court. You hop on a bunch of rocks until you reach the land. You continue walking along the riverbank until you come across a moving rock. You rub your eyes and see it moving again. It's a dinosaur-looking turtle that resembles a crocodile with armor. The mata mata is a freshwater turtle that disguises itself with its surroundings to catch prey. Their heads stretch longer than their bodies. You shimmy your way past it and continue. You head back into the rainforest and find a spot to rest. Wait, there are giant ants everywhere. They're the biggest ants in the world and can produce one of the most painful stings out there, even comparable to a wasp's sting. You immediately get up and find another place to rest. As you continue walking along, you notice the same feeling of something following you. You can hear some leaves rustling, but it's getting dark and there's no way of telling. You find a nice little spot to build a campfire and catch some Z's. But in the Amazon, everything is a threat. Except for those cute capybaras wandering around. They live in groups next to water sources. They're also the biggest rodents in the world. You don't need to worry about them if you're stuck in the middle of the Amazon rainforest. Suddenly, you feel something slithering up next to you. You look down and see a massive green anaconda just about to constrict you. They are the heaviest snakes in the world and can grow up to 20 feet long and have a huge appetite. You get up and sprint your way out of there. All right, you found a decent cave to crash in. It's daytime again, and you're still alive. You continue walking along the rainforest. You were able to find some breakfast to boost your energy for the rest of the day. You spot something on a tree that looks like a branch, but it's actually a potu, a master of disguise that can spend days motionless on broken tree branches. These bizarre birds use those branches as their permanent home, where they lay their eggs and chill all day. You continue your way through the rainforest and see a Brazilian wandering spider crawling on a tree branch right in front of you. 8 of these species can be found in the Amazon area. They are some of the most aggressive and venomous spiders out there. So, you make a big detour and walk away from it. You feel someone walking next to you again, but you still can't figure out what it is. You see a steep cliff with a waterfall hitting a large lake ahead of you. Looks peaceful, until you see a team of black caimans gathering around the shore. They're the biggest predators in the whole Amazon ecosystem and feed on anything that moves. It's a good thing you're on high ground, otherwise, whoa! You slip and fall down the river, right on the deep end. So far, no caimans spotted you. You swim underwater and try to get to the opposite end of where the reptiles are. As you climb out and dry yourself off, you notice some large black spots on you. You try pulling them off, but they've latched on pretty hard. The Amazon giant leech finds its target by tracking movement and shadow. Once they attach themselves to the skin, it's extremely difficult to extract them. The best way to do so is to slide your finger next to its mouth and pull it off slowly. Ugh. You manage to get them off your body and see that the caimans are swimming towards you. You're pinned to the wall with the lake of hungry reptiles approaching. Suddenly, a pink dolphin jumps out of the water and splashes all over them. They can grow larger than humans and are the celebrities of the Amazon. Scientists think they get their color from the blood capillaries on their skin. The Amazon even has bull sharks swimming around. These carnivorous giant fish are threatening to humans and can swim in both saltwater and freshwater. These sharks prey on anything within their reach, including other sharks. The dolphin distracted the caimans, so you climb up the cliff and try to find the best way to escape. Opened jaws waiting for you to fall into the pit are right below you. You're lucky enough to escape to the top, but as your arms pull you up, the first thing that you see is a jaguar looking straight at you. It's the creature that's been following you this whole time. You get up while it starts circling you, timing its strike. You know that you can't take on a jaguar, nor can you outrun it, so you grab a large tree branch from the ground to defend yourself. It jumps at you, but you duck down in time. The jaguar lands in the water far away from the caiman crocs. It's a good thing these large kitties are excellent swimmers. You pick yourself up and continue. And to your surprise, you find your boat again. You fix it up and sail your way out of the Amazon. Whew!
So, contrary to popular belief, labeling the Nile as the longest river in the world might be a misconception. The measurement of a river's length entails more than simply calculating the distance between its starting point and end point. Rivers are intricate systems comprised of various tributaries, which significantly impact their overall length. In fact, when accounting for these tributaries, the initial figure can increase up to threefold, exemplified by the Mississippi River. From its origin in Itasca to its conclusion in New Orleans, the measurement suggests one length. However, the inclusion of the Missouri River alters this perception entirely. This discrepancy has fueled ongoing debates regarding the Nile's length compared to that of the Amazon River. Despite Google's recognition of the Nile as the longest river worldwide, it may not fully align with the factual reality. That's a nice way to put it. To comprehend this concept, envision rivers as the veins within a human body. It would be inaccurate to assume that a 6-foot-tall individual only has 6 feet of veins, right? Veins intricately weave throughout the entire body, much like a vast network. Rivers operate under the same principle, and the length of the main river is not the sole consideration. The extensive network of tributaries holds equal importance. Meanwhile, atmospheric rivers are fascinating meteorological occurrences, characterized by air currents that transport incredible amounts of water vapor all the way from the Amazon rainforest in northern South America to as far as northern Argentina. These airborne highways serve as essential conduits for the life-giving moisture carried by these airborne rivers, and their influence extends across Brazil's central west, southeast, and south regions, shaping the waterfall patterns in these areas. When these ethereal rivers converge with specific weather conditions, such as a cold front, the latent humidity they bear can transform into much-needed rainfall. This precipitation plays a vital role not only in sustaining the diverse ecosystems of the region, but also supporting Brazil's thriving economy in multiple ways. The significance of this phenomenon is evident as it enables the irrigation of crops, ensuring agricultural productivity and food security. Additionally, it replenishes local rivers, keeping the water flow steady and supporting aquatic life. Moreover, the water collected by these rivers is channeled into dam reservoirs, providing a reliable source of energy for the nation. The amount of water carried by the airborne rivers may match or even surpass the enormity of the Amazon's flow. Thus, when we unite the conventional Amazon River with its aerial counterpart, it becomes significantly larger than the Nile. Atmospheric rivers are also observed in the Congo Basin, where the climate is predominantly shaped by the moisture emanating from the Atlantic Ocean and the forests of the Congo Basin. This incredible phenomenon leads to evaporation levels as high as 3 to 6 feet of water per year. These rivers vary in size and strength, but on average, they transport a water vapor volume comparable to the flow at the mouth of the Mississippi River. In rare cases, exceptionally powerful atmospheric rivers can carry up to 15 times that amount. When these rivers reach land, they release the accumulated water vapor, resulting in rainfall or snowfall. Although atmospheric rivers come in various forms, Those with high water vapor content and intense winds can cause extreme precipitation and flooding, especially when they linger over flood-prone watersheds. An example of a well-known atmospheric river is the Pineapple Express, a robust system capable of transporting moisture from the tropical regions near Hawaii to the U.S. West Coast. Such events can disrupt travel, trigger mudslides, and lead to significant destruction of life and property. However, not all atmospheric rivers pose risks. Many are weaker systems that provide valuable rain or snow, essential for maintaining water supplies. Plus, they play a critical role in the global water cycle and have a close association with water supply and flood hazards, particularly in the western United States. In addition for the potential for flooding, atmospheric rivers also contribute to desirable increases in snowpack. A series of atmospheric rivers was responsible for severe winter storms that battered the U.S. West Coast from western Washington to southern California between 2010 and just recently in early 2024, resulting in rainfall ranging from 11 to 25 inches in certain regions. So, if water vapor can be considered a river, it begs the question, what else can be classified as a river? Surprisingly, even without any water, something can still be deemed a river. This fascinating phenomenon is known as a wadi, traditionally referring to a river valley. Wadis can be found in gently sloping, almost flat areas of deserts. Unlike traditional rivers, wadis lack permanent channels due to the sporadic presence of water flow. As a result, they exhibit braided stream patterns caused by limited water supply and an abundance of sediments. The water that does manage to reach the stream bed percolates down, causing a sudden decrease in energy and significant deposition. Additionally, wadis can develop sediment dams, altering stream patterns during subsequent flash floods. Interestingly, wind also plays a role in sediment deposition within wadis. When wadi sediments are submerged or moist, wind-driven sediments settle on top of them, resulting in a mixture of both water and wind sediments. Rivers can be peculiar not just because they consist of sand or air, but also because of their fascinating coverings. In certain conditions, Scotland's River Dee reveals an intriguing sight: peculiar frozen formations that resemble lily pads. These formations, called ice pancakes or pancake ice, occur naturally when gentle waves cause smooth pieces of ice to collide, resulting in smooth rounded edges. As these ice disks interact with the waves, they gain raised edges, giving them an appearance reminiscent of lily pads. Usually, pancake ice has a somewhat slush-like consistency. Some media reports have suggested that the ice on the River Dee formed from frozen foam. But scientists explain that while it is plausible, the pancake ice still develops through the collision process. Over time, these ice pancakes often merge together, forming large sheets of ice. If the ice becomes thick enough and the water remains turbulent, it can bend, fracture, and stack upon itself, creating remarkable structures called ice ridges. Now, imagine a river not made of water but of methane. It may sound like an outlandish idea, but on Saturn's moon Titan, this is actually a reality. Vid Flamina, a fascinating river on Titan, consists of liquid methane and ethane and has drawn comparisons to the mighty Nile. Stretching over 249 miles, it gracefully flows into Ligeia Mare, which is Titan's second largest hydrocarbon sea. While most of Titan's surface is composed of water ice, Vid Flamina stands out as a breathtaking river that carves canyons into the icy terrain, mimicking solid bedrock. NASA scientists believe that this extraordinary river hosts rapids, whirlpools, and even waterfalls, mirroring the features found in Earth's rivers. When NASA's Cassini probe reached Saturn in 2004, its main goal was to explore this giant planet and its moons. Scientists were particularly interested in finding evidence of liquid methane on Titan due to its unique surface temperature and methane-rich atmosphere. However, initial observations from Cassini concentrated on Titan's equatorial region, disappointed the researchers as they found no signs of seas or rivers. But this disappointment turned into excitement when Cassini's orbit shifted, enabling the team to focus on other areas of Titan's surface using radar techniques. Surprisingly, radar signals bounced off various angled and rough features such as sand dunes, cliffs, and rocks. But when the radar reached Titan's polar regions, the signal ceased, revealing mysterious dark spots resembling lakes, rivers, and tributaries akin to those found on Earth. The groundbreaking discovery came in December 2012 when Yanni Reidebouw, a scientist working with Cassini's team, announced an image captured in September of the same year. The image unveiled a river resembling the Nile, extending over 200 miles in a relatively straight course, indicating a correlation with fault lines similar to other significant rivers nearby. This remarkable flowing body navigates through rugged and inclined terrain, suggesting the occurrence of tectonic processes comparable to those on Earth. The Amazon River travels through 9 South American countries at a length of over 4,000 miles. Still, it's impossible to cross it by a bridge. With the river being the main highway, traveling through this dense forest, and so few areas populated around the river, there's just no reason to have one. The river can rise up to 30 feet, and the river crossings that were only 3 miles wide can expand to over 30 miles in just a few short weeks in certain spots, making a bridge nearly impossible to build here. In New Zealand, in the coastal town of Mauriki, there are huge spherical boulders. Some rocks are 6.5 feet tall and weigh about 7 tons, as much as 10 cows. Ooh, there's a 10-cow boulder. Maori legend has it that these rocks are from the remains of the goods from a large shipwreck that happened hundreds of years ago. From a more scientific perspective, it's sand and gravel combined to form these giant boulders. Waves and winds give them a smooth, round appearance over time. The whole process might take millions of years. Indonesia's Kaiwan Ijen volcano is famous for a stunning turquoise-colored lake sitting at the top of the peak, but don't dip in. It's an acid lake. But its scariest part is the sulfuric gases leaking out when lava flows freely, reaching temperatures hotter than 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. When those gases come in contact with the air, they combust into a spectacular electric blue flame. That's why the volcano has blue lava. The island of Surtsey, south of Iceland, was formed over 50 years ago by a volcanic eruption. It all began back in 1963 when a powerful volcanic eruption created one of the youngest islands on the planet. All sorts of bacteria, fungi, and molds began taking over the island, leading to numerous other animals finding their way here, like seals and birds. Birds and ocean waves deposited seeds all over the island. Sadly, the island's getting smaller now because of water and wind erosion. Located off the coast of Brazil, there's an island called… I'm a bit rusty on my Portuguese, so here it is on the screen. It looks perfectly untouched and pristine. Bad news? Dangerous snakes overrun it completely, so take a doctor with you in case you want to go there. Over 4,000 of the golden lancehead vipers inhabit this island. These 3-foot-long snakes are among the most venomous in the entire world. I think I'll skip that. Landing down under, you can see the Opera House, Uluru, lots of kangaroos, and catch the strangest wave of the world, Wave Rock in Western Australia. It's not made of water, but stone. It can be up to 50 feet tall and almost 300 feet long. It's especially incredible after rains in winter when the Western Australian wildflowers fill up the entire landscape. In Atlanta, there's a World of Coca-Cola museum. The formula for the secret recipe is in a large security vault, heavily guarded at all times. Only a handful of people can get through those vault doors. Since its creation in 1886, the company has kept it a secret for only the most honest employees. In 2006, a former worker tried to sell the formula to Pepsi, only for Pepsi to call the police and inform Coca-Cola. The Polka Dot Lakes is a must for anyone who is in British Columbia. After the summer's scorching heat evaporates the lake's water, it leaves behind yellow, blue, and green water spots. These pools are full of all sorts of minerals, like sodium, calcium, and magnesium sulfates that get concentrated in the pools. You can't get too close or even dip your feet into them. A fence protects the entire lake with a sign about how culturally and ecologically sensitive the area is. In Death Valley, California, there's a mystery of the sailing stones. Since the early 1900s, the mystery of how all these stones were seemingly moving by themselves across the desert floor baffled everyone. Some believe that the rocks move by thin pieces of ice around the stones pushed by winds after winter. No one ever saw any of these rocks moving until 2014. Scientists set time-lapse recorders, and the footage showed the rocks sliding along the ground over time. The Marble Caves in Chile, located in the beautiful area of Patagonia, formed from over 6,000 years of waves wearing down the rocks. The crystal blue walls reflect the vibrant turquoise water, making it perfect for kayaking. Walking in Chestnut Ridge Park in New York, one can see an eternal flame. What makes this one stand out, though, is it's underneath a waterfall. Occasionally, the flame will go out for short periods, but it will light up again. Sometimes it's thanks to certain hikers along the way. If you ever stop your car on a magnetic hill in New Brunswick, Canada, you'll see the car might start rolling backwards up the hill, all by itself. While it looks like it's moving the wrong way, this is just an illusion. There are several hills like this all around the world. What looks like an incline is the opposite, all because there's no horizon for perspective. The brightest bioluminescent bay in the world, called Puerto Mosquito, is located off the coast of Puerto Rico. The bay is named for the pirate Roberto Cofresi and his small boat El Mosquito, not after those annoying insects. During the summer months, you'll have glassy water at night with millions of tiny microorganisms bumping into each other and emitting blue light. The Chocolate Hills in the Philippines is a group of unusually shaped hills located in the middle of the island of Bohol in the Philippines. There are 1,000 to 2,000 discovered so far. They have nothing to do with chocolate at all, but they resemble the color after the dry season, when the grass turns from green to brown. In the northeastern part of Thailand, 466 miles away from Bangkok, is a 75-million-year-old rock formation sticking right out of the mountains. Their shapes look just like a pod of whales swimming together. No wonder this place is called Three Whale Rocks. Millions of years ago, this area was just a desert, but this land has changed quite dramatically during this time. These sandstone mountains were lifted up by plate tectonics, that's the shifting of the crust layers, called lithosphere, and erosion by the Mekong River, resulting in the strangely shaped rock formations we see today. Salar de Uyuni in Bolivia is the world's largest salt flat. At 4,050 square miles in size, it's twice as large as Grand Canyon National Park. After winter has passed, the salt lake is transformed into a beautiful giant sky-reflecting mirror between September and May. With salt all the way to the horizon, it creates an illusion of endlessness. The thin layer of water left over from ice melting creates a shimmering effect of the sky, making it one of the best places to visit in the world. The Catatumbo River in Venezuela might be the stormiest place in the world, with nearly 300 storm days a year. The lightning storms are so consistent, and they're predicted 3 months in advance. During the wet season in October, you might see 30 lightning flashes in a single minute. At sunset, strong winds flow around the 3 surrounding mountains, forming storm clouds over the water. When the water droplets of humid air collide with ice crystals from the cold air, the static charges cause a lightning storm that happens nearly every night. Off the southern tip of Japan lies the Yonaguni Formation. Archaeologists believe that the monument belongs to a fabled Pacific civilization, like Atlantis, that vanished beneath the waves thousands of years ago. If it's truly a lost civilization, or just nature having a little fun, this is the site to dive into. Features inside the structure resemble stonework like castles, temples, and a stadium, connected by roads and what seems to be large walls all the way around. There are even marks in the stone that appear to show quarry work, faded faces, and rocks sculpted into animal shapes. Some scientists believe that the symmetry of the stones is not as straight as reported. It appears solid rock rather than carved blocks, weathered down by all the water over many years. Plitvice Lakes National Park in Croatia is an interconnected chain of waterfalls, the tallest being 230 feet, and underground water channels, creating natural dams and lakes in such a picturesque environment. Found in the deep woodlands surrounded by meadows brimming with wildflowers, brown bears, gray wolves, lynx, deer, and plenty of rare bird species for birdwatchers call these 115 square miles of the national park home.
You are lost deep within the jungle in the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. There are strange noises all around you, and to make it worse, the sun is setting. Soon, you'll be alone in the middle of an unknown rainforest. Guess it was a pretty bad idea to come looking for El Dorado on your own, wasn't it? You keep walking as fast as you can, when suddenly, wait! What's this you're seeing? It looks like large stairways made out of stone. This definitely doesn't look natural, so you take a picture. Maybe you didn't strike gold, but you might have just found something relevant. Congratulations! You found Akamtun, a long-lost Mayan city. Hidden 37 miles into the jungle, the name literally translates to stone column. Stone was probably in at the time, so these guys used a lot of it to build their pyramids, houses, and even ball courts. If you ever thought that Europeans invented ball games, think twice. Mayans loved to play ball games for recreational purposes. Akamtun is part of a series of other long-lost Mayan cities that are being discovered with the help of new technology nowadays. We'll talk more about the other ones in a jiffy. Perhaps the biggest surprise of this one is that it was surrounded by wetlands, which is why the city was built on high ground. The city was monumental, covering an area of over 120 acres. That would be as big as 90 football fields right next to each other. Scientists have found proof that Akamtun had pyramids of up to 49 feet high, and that it was likely an important social hub between 250 and 1000 CE. This is definitely a game changer. But lost Mayan cities began to be unearthed in the 19th century. Modern technologies, such as LiDAR imaging, help archaeologists see through dense canopies of the forests. This means that people don't really have to risk getting lost in the tropical jungle like you did at the beginning of this video. LiDAR works sort of like an X-ray. It sends out laser beams that can detect any signs of ruins or ancient constructions. According to space archaeologist Sarah Parchak, satellite imagery has been a key player in discovering ancient cities in South America, Egypt, and other places. Sarah herself spends most of her days scouring images for any signs of where there could have been cities long ago. She says that more often than not, what happens is that ruins are covered by vegetation, soil, or sand, which makes them super tricky to find. But thanks to these awesome tools, scientists also made the huge discovery of ancient Mayan causeways, which spread throughout old Mayan territories. I mean, take a look at these roadways. You'd expect to see ruins like this in places such as Portugal, England, or the United States. I'm talking about 130 feet wide roads painted white to help travelers journey through the nighttime. Scientists recently unearthed a 110-mile network of roads such as these, and they think this dates back to before the first registered Mayan highways we've known so far. These roadways, which sometimes ran over the swampy ground and were even elevated at times, are being called the world's first superhighways. Even if there is no registry of animal-powered vehicles, it's believed that the Maya used them to travel around a network of possible 964 settlements. They were built like a huge spiderweb, and from what archaeologists have gathered, this huge system of roads worked to connect a big system of economic and social interactions between Mayan cities. This completely debunks the traditional idea that the Mayan pre-classic period, which dates back to 2000 BCE, was made of small, tribal settlements. Imagine the manpower and engineering ability you need to muster to build something close to these white highways. Scientists believe that these causeways were built pretty much the same way as the Mayans built their pyramids, with a mixture of mud and quarry stone. Oh, and using several layers of limestone to make them white. That's pretty cool, right? But let's take a few steps back for a moment to get some context. The Mayans were one of the biggest pre-Columbian civilizations living in the Americas. Until now, experts believe that at its apex, the Mayan civilization consisted of over 40 cities, with a population of millions of people. That's a lot of folks. Their civilization spanned Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, Guatemala, and Belize. And they survived mainly on agriculture. The thing is, the Yucatan Peninsula was an extremely difficult place to grow crops. So the Mayans had to develop a complex irrigation system in most of their cities. They built a series of ceremonial buildings, pyramids, and plazas. The Mayans might have been keen pyramid builders, but they also developed an advanced astronomical system. With whatever ancient technology they had, they were able to predict the exact location of planets such as Venus and Mars, as well as the exact dates of eclipses. If you've ever seen examples of ancient Mayan cities, this is Tikal. Located at the heart of the Guatemalan jungle, Tikal is believed to have been the capital of the ancient Mayan conquest state. At its height, it was comparable in importance to cities such as London or New York in today's world. It's composed of a series of complex monuments. The North Acropolis is one of Tikal's most ancient complexes of monuments. Built solely by human hands around 350 BCE, it served as the resting place of kings and chiefs. Its monuments are up to 200 feet high. Back in the day, the step pyramid temples were painted a beautiful red. Mayans loved that color. Today, of course, you'll only see the limestone. Then there's Chichen Itza. It's got one of the best preserved pyramids on Earth to date. Located in Mexico's Yucatan state, this Mayan city is well over 1,500 years old. At its peak, it was home to 35,000 people. The site covers 4 square miles of land. The highlight is El Castillo, a tremendous step-like temple standing 80 feet above ground. Its most peculiar feature is that it has 91 steps up each of its 4 sides, including the upper platform, which makes for 365 steps, the same number of days as the solar year. You can see that these folks were a pretty big deal, huh? That's why nobody can really understand what happened to them. There's a big lack of evidence on the decline of this almighty empire. What could have been the cause of their demise? Was it a drought? New research in 2017 did bring some new discoveries into the mix. Using data from a site at Ceibal, located at southwest of Tikal, scientists analyzed radiocarbon data from ceramics and archaeological excavations to extract new information about the unexpected demise of this great civilization. The information shows that instead of a sudden collapse, the Mayans most likely fell in waves of social instability and political crises. These events are believed to have deteriorated Mayan city centers and began causing the dispersion of the Mayan population. It's hard to pinpoint the exact causes, though. But hey, recent discoveries are shedding a big light on humanity's past. Not only about the Mayan Empire, but about other long-lost civilizations of South America. A major recent discovery in Brazil was done using satellite imaging technology and is also shocking scientists. Some images from near the Xingu River, also in the Amazon, suggest that cities of millions of people might have existed inside the jungle, way before our modern civilization ever existed. I mean, if this doesn't shock you, I don't know what will. Satellite imagery also detected a network of trenches dating back to 200 and 1200 CE in the Bolivian Amazon forest. These proofs suggest settlements that could have supported around 60,000 people right in the middle of the Amazon forest. When researchers from the University of Florida went on ground to check the satellite information, they were shocked to find several mounds that were accompanied by ditches and geoglyphs. Archaeologists also found remnants of carefully designed walls centered around plazas, much like the type of construction done by the ancient Mayans.
Now, of course you know that the Amazon River is famous for its piranhas, bull sharks, and other creatures you don't want to meet. But there are even more dangerous rivers in the world. The deepest of them, the Congo, goes so far down in some sections that even light can't reach there. It's the only major river that crosses the equator twice and carries enough water to fill more than 13 Olympic-sized swimming pools into the Atlantic Ocean every second. Wow! Even the most experienced boaters have trouble passing through all of the river's strong currents, rapids in its upper part, and waterfalls and gorges in the lower section. The Congo currents are so fast and powerful that they even divide animals like mountains and oceans do. There are new species of fish evolving separately on the two banks as they can't reach the other side and breed with each other. One of the most dangerous types of fish living here is the Goliath tigerfish. These monsters, that grow up to 5 feet and travel at the speed of 25 miles per hour, are relatives of piranhas. Their mouths are full of vicious, razor-sharp teeth. Their females lay hundreds of thousands of eggs, and the offspring are predators from birth. You have a good reason to fear the Goliath tigerfish, as they're the only freshwater fish in Africa that have attacked crocodiles and even humans. Okay, not swimming there. There are dense jungles and more hungry wildlife, including snakes and some aggressive hippos, all along the river. Still, it's used as a water highway in Central Africa, so barges traveling on it for weeks are often crowded with up to 2,000 people and capsize every now and then. And if you believe the local folklore, there's one more thing to be afraid of: the one who stops the flow of the rivers, a dinosaur-like beast that is said to live in the Congo River basin. There have been over 100 sightings over the last century, but no one can provide solid evidence the beast is real. At the turn of the 21st century, there was a series of terrible, mysterious stories on the Kali River in Asia. Something described as a mud-colored water pig would drag swimmers underwater in front of terrified eyewitnesses. British biologist Jeremy Wade stepped up to crack the case. He noticed that all the scary incidents were happening in one specific spot, stretching about 4 miles. Villagers told him this creature was growing big and bad from all the food it got. Wade examined the water with a depth sounder and thought it could have been a whirlpool. Then the monster dragged a domestic water buffalo into the water. The buffaloes are big and heavy, so the creature that attacked it would have to be super strong. Saltwater crocodiles don't go so far inland, and the most common local species of crocodiles don't live in cold waters. There were no bull sharks in the area either. Finally, Wade spotted several goonch catfish underwater. Some of them were human-sized. They couldn't capture these monsters with a regular fishing rod, but a special ceremonial construction did the job. The largest fish was 6 feet 7 inches long and 3 times the weight of an average gaunch. It was large enough to take down a human or a large animal, but Wade mentioned there could be even bigger ones living in the Kali River. The Orinoco River in South America is dangerous to navigate because of some crazy curves and strong underwater currents. It's easy to get lost here, even if you have your GPS on. There are sudden waterfalls all along, and you must be prepared to handle those to survive. The river is the only home to a rare Orinoco crocodile and has some pretty scary-looking vampire fish swimming around. This payara fish has sharp, spiky daggers that line their gums and 2 elongated fangs that rise from their lower jaws. Could probably use an orthodontist and some braces, you think? It's a ferocious hunter constantly looking for the next victim, which is going to be a medium or large-sized fish. If a human catches a payara, it will defend itself, leaving cuts, nips, and bites, but there are no known cases of this cutie taking a human life. Well, that's good. The Yellow River in China received its name after its color, but it wasn't always this yellow. It was first formed at least 30 million years ago and shifted its course over 30 times over the centuries. Yellow sediments moving downstream from a plateau in the distance transformed it from clear to muddy. This fine-grained substance piled up at the bottom of the river and formed natural dams. The huge amounts of water that the river carries need to find their way to the sea, and that's when major floods happened, taking several million lives in various epochs. The locals tried to solve the problem by building higher and higher levees, but it only made things worse. Water coming out of the river would now have nowhere to back up, as the riverbed was higher than the surrounding land. This even shifted the river's mouth. Now there are massive dams and dikes all along the river to try to contain it. The Parana River is the second longest in Latin America and has many tributaries. They flow in from the highlands near the Andes, and there's a huge drainage in the wet season. This makes the river a perfect home for, guess what, piranhas. There are 30 to 60 species of these scary fish in the Parana waters. In late 2013, they attacked bathers cooling off by the water on a hot day. People started running out of the river as they felt something was biting them in the water. Luckily, no one lost their lives in the accident, but it's still considered one of the most audacious piranha attacks ever recorded. Biologists later determined that the type of piranhas, called palomates, was to blame for this. and humans had probably disturbed their breeding grounds. Well, the Piranha also has a strong current that is tricky for boats and swimmers to overcome. Plus, it often floods, which can be dangerous for people living in the surrounding areas. The longest river in the world, the Nile, flows through 11 countries all the way into the Mediterranean Sea. Expeditions have spent centuries looking for its source, and no one still knows for sure where this mighty river begins. Adding to the mystery, the Nile takes an unexpected turn right in the middle of the Sahara. Scientists have figured out the reason is a massive underground rock formation from millions of years ago. The Nile has served as the most important water highway for civilizations through centuries, but it has some pretty dangerous inhabitants, like crocodiles that grow to be 20 feet long, which is slightly more than the height of an average giraffe. These bad guys can reach a speed of 30 miles per hour on land and take the lives of a couple hundred people every year. Hippopotamuses that also live here sometimes go after boats, and venomous snakes like the black mamba and the Egyptian cobra add to the mix. One of the most dangerous creatures on the Nile is the mosquito, as they carry around all sorts of diseases that affect hundreds of thousands of people. The Brahmaputra River in Asia carries waters from the mighty Himalayas. When the snows in the mountains melt, the river floods massively, causing landslides, displacing millions of people, and taking the lives of hundreds of animals in the nearby national parks. Such floods are also common during the monsoon season in India, from June to October, with heavy rains. The course of the Brahmaputra River is changed incredibly over the past 2.5 centuries. Erosion is another danger it's hiding. The banks of the river are mostly made of weak cohesive sand and silt, and even though the erosion rate has gone down, it is still the reason a lot of people lose their land and get displaced. The Brahmaputra is one of the few rivers in the world that has a tidal bore. That's a strong tidal wave that pushes up the river against the current where a river empties into an ocean or sea. And there you have it.
A story that will surely send chills down your spine is about a daring young American sailor named Tammy Oldham Ashcraft. Back in 1983, when she was just 23 years old, she had quite the adventure. Along with her British beau Richard Sharp, she was tasked with navigating the ocean from Tahiti to San Diego in California on a luxury yacht. But you know how the ocean can be? It's not always smooth sailing. 20 days into the journey, the two lovebirds got ensnared in a Category 4 hurricane, coming with monstrous waves and wicked winds. Even though they stood their ground against the raging waves, the yacht was rolled over like a beach ball as it tumbled between two waves. The last thing etched in Tammy's memory, before being knocked out cold for 27 hours, is Richard shouting as an enormous wave slammed onto their boat. Later on, she penned down her harrowing ordeal in a book, which was later turned into a movie. Tammy had her fair share of sailing experience under her belt before the fateful journey. She had great navigation skills and had already sailed across the Pacific twice. Setting off from Tahiti to San Diego, they initially had a decent journey, but a couple of weeks in, trouble started brewing. They caught wind of a tropical area down by Panama, and before they knew it, the storm was charging west and gathering intensity. The pair made efforts to reach the safety zone, but the hurricane was moving at incredible speed. As fate would have it, the usually short-lived hurricane kept going. Facing giant waves and hurricane winds is enough to give anyone nightmares. The boat took a hammering, and despite their best preparations, dealing with such rough seas was a monumental task. The boat would leap into the air over the towering waves and come crashing down, making the whole structure shudder. Richard was in the cockpit, secured with a safety harness as they bobbed over the massive waves. But then, they ran into rogue waves, those monstrous anomalies that come out of nowhere. One such wave made the boat do a 360-degree flip, and that was the last thing Tammy remembered. When she came to her senses, Richard was nowhere to be found. The safety harnesses meant to keep him attached to the boat were ruptured. With no one nearby to pick up her distress signals, Tammy was left with a non-functioning long-distance radio after 2 weeks of relentless battering from the sea. All she had was a short-range, very high-frequency VHF radio, which gave up after 5 days due to water damage. She was alone and completely cut off. Tammy had to rely on her basic tools to navigate to Hawaii, a sextant and sight reduction tables. Using the sun's position, she determined her latitude, and once she found her watch, she could also figure out her longitude. It took a while, but she did make it to Hawaii. Throughout her time being lost at sea, Tammy showed just how resourceful she was. She remembered trying to get the engine running, but some of the boat's parts had melted onto the propeller shaft. Despite being mechanically inclined, she couldn't waste time trying to fix something that was potentially beyond repair. Instead, she relied on her training as a bosun. Tammy also kept a log of her time at sea, always aware that if she didn't make it, this might be the only clue to what happened. Looking back on the log, she admitted that her mental state had been fragile during her ordeal. Despite everything, Tammy shared that the human survival instinct is incredibly strong. She wanted to live. The hero of our next tale is a man named Steve Callahan. His story, though it sounds like a Hollywood movie script, is real as real can be. Back in 1982, Steve found himself participating in a single-handed sailing race across the vast Atlantic Ocean. He trusted his voyage to a self-designed vehicle, proudly named Napoleon Solo. It was a sturdy, reliable boat, built to weather storms and defy waves. But unpredictable weather loomed in, tearing into the race fleet and sinking a bunch of boats. Steve had to sideline himself and dock his beloved Napoleon Solo in Spain for some urgent repairs. After patching up the boat, Steve took off again, this time setting his sights on the Canary Islands. His heart was set on crossing the Atlantic and reaching the sandy shores of Antigua. Sadly, his boat was battered by strong winds, leaving it significantly damaged. Steve found himself with no choice but to abandon the ship. He soon boarded an inflatable life raft. Steve decided he wasn't going down without a fight. Before Napoleon Solo sank into the depths of the Atlantic, he dived repeatedly into the turbulent waters to salvage what he could. With a few essential items secured, he battled hunger, thirst, and loneliness for the next 76. Some fishermen eventually found him and whisked him off to a local hospital where he began his recovery. Now you might think this is where Steve's story ends. His incredible saga of survival was shared far and wide in sailing magazines, featured on numerous TV shows, and finally cemented in his own book. But the record for the longest time ever spent lost at sea was broken by a man named Jose Salvador Alvarenga. He is an incredibly tough soul whose tenacity and will to survive would become the stuff of legends. That's because for 438 long, difficult days, he was adrift. A fisherman by trade, Jose was no stranger to the sea's unpredictable moods. His life's most terrifying adventure started on a day just like any other, in 2012. That was the day Jose and his fishing mate headed off the shores of a quaint fishing village named Costa Azul in Mexico. It was their first voyage together. Life, however, had a nasty surprise in store for them. Soon after they had left the comfort of the shoreline behind, they were ambushed by a furious storm. It tossed their small boat about like a toy, steering it off its course. Their ship's motor and most of their onboard electronics were rendered useless. Jose, displaying his quick thinking, managed to radio his boss for help before the communication device gave up, but the response was as powerless as their situation. For 5 relentless days, the storm messed with them. When the skies finally cleared, Jose and his mate found themselves lost, with no idea of their whereabouts or how to get back. To make matters worse, the storm had taken away most of their fishing equipment, leaving them with mere basic survival tools. Their boat no longer had sails, motors, or oars. Month after month, they drifted aimlessly. Their sustenance came from good old Mother Nature, rainwater, and a random collection of sea critters like fish, turtles, and birds. After about 4 months, Jose lost his friend, but he decided to carry on, in hopes he'd one day be rescued. Little did he know, he was nowhere near the end of his journey. He attempted signaling every passing ship he saw, but his desperate cries for help were useless. Relying solely on rainwater and whatever the sea offered him for food, Jose kept track of his days by the changing phases of the moon. It was a bit over a year after the disastrous storm that Jose finally sighted land. His heart filled with hope, and he abandoned his trusty but worn-out boat, choosing to swim towards the shore. To his amazement, he found himself on one of the Marshall Islands, situated on the far side of the Pacific from where his ordeal had begun. The man was taken to a hospital where he slowly but steadily recovered his strength. Upon his return, his family declared they had never given up on him and were over the moon on the news of his discovery. However, this survival story was so fantastical that many raised their eyebrows in doubt. Could a man really survive for so long at sea on a tiny boat? However, there were those who offered a counterpoint. Experts explained that fresh meat from birds and turtles, which Alvarenga claimed to have consumed in plenty, contained enough vitamin C to ensure survival.
Scientists discovered something Atlantis-like near Australia. There used to be an entire continent that's now underwater. Here's what happened to it. Around 70,000 years ago, during the last ice age, there was a huge landmass called Sahul. It was located in the southwestern Pacific Ocean. This ancient supercontinent connected what we now know as Australia, New Guinea, Tasmania, and the Aru Islands into one giant piece of land. Imagine lush tropical rainforests surrounded by beautiful mountains. Sahul's tallest mountains were in the New Guinea highlands, with peaks reaching over 13,000 feet. This beautiful place was home to a variety of unique animals, most of which were pouched creatures. But back then, they weren't just koalas and kangaroos. Sahul was filled with different types of grazers, burrowers, scavengers, and predators. It was home to a huge diprotodon, a powerful hunter Thiosolio, and a horrifying Megalania, a creature that's much larger than any living lizard today. It was a unique place because the rest of the world was filled with placental animals at the time, like wolves, elephants, and humans. In Sahul, the only normal mammals were bats and rodents. But not all its parts were the same. The Timor, Arafura, and Carpentaria regions were covered by hot savanna and dry forests. It looked kinda like modern Australia, hot air deserts with scrubland, steppe, and temperate forests along the eastern coast. Back then, people were migrating all across the world. They made an incredible journey from Southeast Asia to Sahul and first arrived here from 60 to 45,000 years ago. They mostly traveled by foot and crossed the sea using bamboo rafts and simple boats. They came there from an ancient landmass called Sunda, which includes parts of Southeast Asia. They traveled across a series of islands known as Wallachia and eventually spread across Sahul. And it wasn't a small journey. Sahul was huge, around 4.1 million square miles. That's bigger than the USA or Canada. It stretched from the equator to around the southern part of New Zealand. So they arrived in what is now Australia and became Australia's first people. Scientists think that Sahul had a population of 500,000. We've discovered cave paintings that date back around 40,000 years. It's a hunting scene depicting an anoa, or miniature buffalo, facing figures of humans and animals. Researchers are trying to figure out how these early settlers moved across Sahul and where we might find archaeological evidence of their journey. To do this, they created a landscape evolution model. The simulation showed how Sahul changed between 75,000 and 35,000 years ago. It showed potential migration routes and archaeological sites. Humans likely traveled along coastlines and rivers. But how did Sahul get submerged off the coast of Australia, similar to the mythical Atlantis? During the last ice age, much of the Earth's water was locked up in large ice sheets and glaciers. The sea levels were much lower than they are today. After that, the global temperatures increased. The ice sheets melted and the sea levels rose, flooding the land bridges that once connected different parts of Sahul together. About 8,000 years ago, New Guinea separated from mainland Australia, and then, about 6,000 years ago, Tasmania did the same. We still can explore the underwater parts of Sahul thanks to new technology. Divers explore and collect samples directly from the ocean floor. Underwater drones can go to places that are too deep or dangerous for humans to explore. And with sonar mapping, scientists use sound waves to create maps of the ocean floor. It's like using an echo to see what's underwater. The sound waves bounce off the seabed and come back, helping us create a picture of what it looks like. Deep underwater, archaeologists have found stone tools and other artifacts. They also discovered fossils of animals like Diprotodon and Thylacoleo. By studying the underwater terrain of Sahul, they learned about the ancient rivers, lakes, and coastlines that existed during the Ice Age. But Sahul isn't the only underwater continent. Sahul isn't the only hidden gem of Southeast Asia. Take Sundaland, a place made up of Sumatra, Java, Borneo, and some other islands. This place was crazy huge during the Ice Age, but now almost fully underwater. Almost, but not entirely. The parts above the ocean are teeming with life. If you like birds, check this place out. It has almost a fifth of the world's bird species. You can spot colorful birds like the Java hawk eagle and the Bali starling among the lush forests. It's also a home to a fourth of Earth's fish species. Sundaland's waters are a haven for marine life, even the most exotic animals like the Asian arowanas. It's also a treasure trove of flowers. That's where you can find Rafflesia and Titan arum, the world's largest flowers. This makes it very similar to Zealandia. Zealandia is a long, narrow piece of land about half the size of Australia. It broke from Antarctica about 100 million years ago. Just like Sundaland, it isn't fully underwater. 7% of it stayed above sea level. This sticking out little piece is what we now call New Zealand, along with Stewart Island and some smaller islands. These pieces of Zealandia are lush and warm. They're packed with volcanoes, mountain ranges, beautiful natural geysers, and hot springs. Local people, Maori, use these hot springs for cooking. People place corn, eggs, and vegetables in baskets and lower them directly in the hot springs. Sometimes they cook food in a pit oven using heated rocks. Another hidden world is known as Argoland. This mysterious landmass was once part of Australia, back when dinosaurs chilled around. It drove scientists crazy for decades. They knew it existed because it left a huge stretch on the ancient seafloor, the Argo Abyssal Plain. About 155 million years ago, it broke off from Australia, saying bye-bye. The continent drifted somewhere north, and when it reached Southeast Asia, it just vanished. Scientists had no idea where it went, but recently they finally found its remains. Turns out, poor Argoland's lower parts started drowning into the Sunda Trench, a horrifyingly deep oceanic pit. The Earth's crust sunk into the mantle. Meanwhile, the upper parts of Argoland were pushed upward, grabbing the younger rocks on land. Because of this, Argoland broke apart into a bunch of smaller pieces. These pieces formed parts of Borneo, Java, Sulawesi, and other regions. The remains are buried under Indonesia and Myanmar. Imagine a colossal landmass the size of Greenland, Greater Adria. Its journey began about 240 million years ago when it broke away from the supercontinent Gondwana. It started moving north, and after 100 million years of enjoying the warm seas, it suddenly crashed into Europe and shattered into pieces. Most of these pieces went deep into the Earth's mantle, but some were scraped off and became part of mountain ranges like the Alps. Today, the remnants of Greater Adria are scattered across more than 30 countries, from Spain to Iran. That's why they're hard to look for. Seychelles was also once part of Gondwana. Yep, these idyllic islands are sitting atop of the ancient continent. We know a lot about it because of its fascinating granite outcrops. 100 years ago, Alfred Wegener discovered continental drift, but no one believed him. These granite outcrops helped him prove that he's not crazy and that tectonic plates really are moving. The Seychelles broke off from India and Madagascar and eventually became a sad loner in the Indian Ocean. This probably happened because of some insanely active volcanoes in the Deccan Traps. But now, the islands are home to unique species both on land and in the coral reefs nearby. Mauritius broke off from India after the dinosaur wiping. Along its journey, it stretched into a long ribbon-like shape and also broke into pieces. Now it's all scattered beneath the Indian Ocean. Scientists stumbled upon this lost land by studying tiny ancient crystals called zircons. These zircons are like time capsules. They date back an astonishing 660 million to 2 billion years. That's even older than Mauritius itself. These ancient crystals hinted that there's another Atlantis somewhere nearby. Turns out there are hidden continents all around the world, and maybe we'll discover more of them in the future.
1,000 years ago, near modern-day St. Louis, Missouri, there was a vibrant, bustling city called Cahokia. It was a Native American city, the largest and most influential one in Mississippian culture. At its peak, around 1050 BCE, Cahokia was home to as many as 30,000 people, making it larger than Paris at the time. But what's interesting is that Cahokia didn't have any big marketplace. Usually trade was the backbone of any big city, yet this one stood out for archaeologists. That's because Cahokia wasn't about commerce. It was about culture, community, and parties. The people who lived there threw massive parties that would last for days. The city's grandest feature was its 50-acre plaza, surrounded by amazing earthen pyramids. This massive space could hold over 10,000 people. Imagine them all gathering there for festivities, dancing, drinking coffees and teas, feasting on deer, and betting on sports. The events were super lively. Cahokians would wear awesome costumes, style their hair in interesting ways, and decorate their bodies with tattoos. Athletes were playing a game called chunky, where they hurled spears at a rolling stone disc, competing to get as close as possible. The roar of the crowd filled the air, and performers showed off their skills. These celebrations were so wild, they left traces in history. After the parties ended, Cahokians cleaned up by tossing leftovers into pits. Archaeologists have uncovered these waste pits, and they were filled with food remains and pottery. One pit alone contained the remains of 2,000 deer, and that's from a single event. They also found traces of yaupon holly, a caffeinated plant that was traded from hundreds of miles away. This just shows how much effort and thought Cahokians put in their celebrations. Would you like to live in a city like this? But aside from all the fun and games, Cahokia was also deeply complex and spiritual. The city was built on a landscape that mixed dry land with swampy patches. Many people believed that this symbolized the connection between the world of the living and the dead. The people of Cahokia saw their city as a bridge between these two realms. They built earthen mounds, both for ceremonies and rituals, and as construction support. These mounds rose from the swampy areas. Meanwhile, people settled in the drier spots. Elevated pathways connected these neighborhoods, creating a physical link between life and death. Isn't it sad that some ancient metropolises that rival modern cities in scale just disappeared? Cahokia's story came to a quiet end around 1350 CE, when the city was abandoned, all due to changes in environments and weather, floods, and other problems. But the influence of Cahokia was so big, it spread to distant places. Some of their traditions, like chunky and yaupon tea, have survived in native communities to this day. Today, Cahokia is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it's not the only megacity we lost. About 5,000 years ago, people in the Indus Valley built some of the world's first cities. Mohenjo-Daro was an ancient city in what is now Pakistan. The city was built around 2500 BCE, and back then, it was a thriving hub of the Indus civilization. Sure, it was much smaller than modern cities, but it was quite huge at the time, around 40,000 inhabitants. It looks like the locals were crazily strict and disciplined people. The city's planning and organization were incredible. It was laid out in a grid pattern. Streets and important buildings aligned along the north-south axis, probably to match the movement of the sun and moon. They also built one of the most advanced systems for water and waste management of their time. The city had about 700 wells. Nearly every house had its own. Most homes also had private bathrooms with drainages and even underground sewers. This shows how skilled these people were at staying clean. And with all this discipline, it looks like there were no kings, queens, or even a central government. They could still have some authority, like local elites or elected officials, just not a classic strict monarchy or religion. Instead, people there cared about simplicity and order. They basically managed themselves, having standardized ways of doing things, from the way tools and potteries were made to how they traded. Which is why, unlike many other cities, Mohenjo-Daro didn't have grand palaces, temples, or monuments. Instead, they had public areas known as citadels. People gathered at citadels for rituals, meetings, and storage of grain. And it seems like this way of life worked perfectly. Scientists found some seals and weights, which means the economy was well regulated. Archaeologists found some intricate artifacts like ivory, lapis lazuli, carnelian beads, and gold jewelry. Another famous find is the small bronze statue known as the Dancing Girl, which was discovered in 1926. Mohenjo-Daro wasn't poor at all. And they also pulled off some awesome buildings. Staying clean was clearly way more important to them than displays of wealth or power. So they created the Great Bath, one of the most famous structures in the city. It's a large, watertight pool built with baked bricks, perched on a mound of earth, being almost a religious place, the closest thing they had to a temple. Meanwhile, the city itself was built on a series of mounds. They grew taller over the centuries as people added new houses and structures. Why did the city fail? No one really knows. There's something mysterious about the sculptures archaeologists found. Many of them seemed intentionally broken. This means the city's later inhabitants, maybe invaders or something, destroyed them for some reason. Some scientists think that the Indus River may have shifted course, disrupting agriculture and trade. But there's no evidence of a flood or any big event like this. It just seems like, over time, the entire Indus civilization just gradually faded away. By 1900 BCE, the culture had shifted and didn't leave much behind. Let me tell you now about the ancient city of Kos, which is located where the modern town of Kos now stands in Greece. Imagine arriving by sea, and the first thing that hits you is the sheer grandeur of its agora. This massive public square built with stones in different colors, laid out on terraces that rise above you. It was one of the biggest in the ancient world, and it made a great impression on anyone approaching the city. This place has a rich history, dating back to around 2300 to 2200 BCE. A long time ago, local folk gathered up from different parts of the island to form a new city in the northeast. People have lived there since the Bronze Age, and over time, it became a super important center of culture and trade. And no wonder, since it's right near a natural harbor. The harbor was sheltered by two breakwaters, and people built some of the most important religious sites there, including the sanctuaries of Aphrodite and Hercules. Kos wasn't just beautiful, though. It had some brilliant design. The whole city was laid out in a neat grid, with streets crossing each other at perfect right angles, literally looking almost like a modern city. Thanks to this, moving around was super easy. and the blocks, or insulae, were big enough to fit several large houses. Kos remained largely unchanged until the 6th century CE. Over time, it started gradually shrinking in size, confined within the walls of what is now the Chora neighborhood. Meanwhile, Palmyra was an ancient city built around a beautiful oasis sometime around the 3rd millennium BCE. Originally known as Tadmor, this city flourished as a major stop on the Silk Road, linking the Near East with Asia. It was a thriving center of trade and culture. They had a marketplace, assembly buildings, grand gates. In other words, this place was bustling with life. The city has been through many hands throughout its history, from the Byzantine to Arab caliphates, which is probably why it had some awesome architecture. An interesting blend of Greco-Roman, Persian, and Arabic vibes. The Temple of Bel, the Great Colonnade, and a Roman-style theater. But, like all the others, it decayed over time. Palmyra's importance faded, and by the early 1400s, it had been largely destroyed. But at least its ruins remained. Right now, they're a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
Strange and amazing items are discovered often, but figuring out what our ancestors were up to is pretty tough. Especially when all you have are just some rusty cups and cave drawings. It's no surprise that even the experts in lab coats sometimes make mistakes. But it's not just about dusty plates and huge stones. Sometimes there's even humans with large heads. So grab your digging tools and let's travel back to ancient times to explore incredible societies that even scientists can't fully explain. Sardinia may look idyllic now, but I'm not gonna lie, I wouldn't fancy visiting it 3,000 years ago. Rumor has it, terrible giants roamed around this island back then. People even talk about finding human skeletons over 13 feet tall there, although nobody's ever shown anything to prove it. But the stories will make you wonder because some weird stuff has definitely happened. In 1974, over 5,000 pieces of broken stone artifacts were found in a part of the island called Monte Prama, but instead of being displayed in a museum, they were locked up in an underground vault for about 30 years. Sounds a bit suspicious, doesn't it? When they were finally displaced in 2005, scientists put the pieces together to find statues of 38 giant men standing 8 feet tall. Not quite as tall as the legendary skeletons, but still pretty huge. It's thought these statues were made by the Mirages people, who lived on the island a long time ago. Besides giant statues, they also built over 8,000 massive stone buildings. Perhaps Mirages weren't giants themselves, but they definitely liked their things big. I do too. I like a big number of likes on our videos. That would be pretty great. Thank you if you liked this and subscribed. Now back to the video. You and I are pretty smart, but we might not be the smartest humans ever. Actually, we might not even be the smartest species. Since 1913, some skull fossils found in South Africa have hinted at a possibly smarter contender called Boskop Man. This human-like species might have lived as recently as 10,000 years ago. Their skull suggests they had really big heads, which means their brains could have been 30% bigger than ours. Wow! Their average IQ could have been around 149, making them among the smartest 0.05% of people today. But if a Boskop Brainiac was so much smarter, why are they not around and we are? Well, bigger isn't always better, you know. Our brains are a lot bigger than our ape relatives, mainly in the prefrontal cortex. This part helps with high-level tasks like making decisions, remembering things short-term, and being aware of ourselves. The parts of the brain that handle our senses and movements haven't really grown much. So, maybe the Boskops spent too much time dwelling on the past rather than doing practical things like hunting. But this is all just guessing. We really don't know what happened to these clever cousins of ours. Some people even argue that Boskops weren't any different from us, with the only evidence being parts of skulls. The jungle is huge. Did you know the Amazon rainforest is home to about 30% of all the world's plant and animal species? That's impressive. However, the history of one native species, humans, has long puzzled scientists. The mysterious Casarabe people lived here for hundreds of years and then vanished around 1400 AD. People thought the Amazon only had a few scattered tribes, but recently we discovered big, unusual shapes in the ground called geoglyphs. These might look like simple shallow ditches, but they're actually the remains of a vast civilization that spread over 5,000 square miles and includes about 450 markings, some as wide as 1,300 feet. That's insane! They likely contained ceremonial buildings and could have hosted up to 1 million people as recently as 550 years ago. Thanks to new technology like LiDAR, which uses a safe laser to map the forest without harming it, we can explore deeper. In 2019, some scans showed miles of raised roads and pathways and even pyramids over 70 feet tall. They found 26 separate settlements, 2 of which were at least 250 acres each. Damn, that's like 330 soccer fields. It's not certain what happened to the Casarabe people. Maybe European conquistadors drove them out. Maybe the most baffling ancient civilization is one we've never actually found a trace of. Yep, I'm talking about Atlantis, the grand city that supposedly sank into the ocean. The first mentions of Atlantis come from the ancient Greek philosopher Plato, who talked about a great city near the Strait of Gibraltar. But for ages, everyone just thought Plato made up Atlantis as a perfect version of his own Athens. So why, about 12,000 years after it supposedly vanished, do we still wonder if it might be real? Well, in the 19th century, U.S. Congressman Ignatius Donnelly wrote a book giving 13 reasons why he thought Atlantis was more than just a myth. Then, in 1965, some folks thought they actually found Atlantis when they discovered the Richat structure, a massive 25-mile-wide dome in Mauritania, Africa. It's so big that you can see the whole thing from space. 2 astronauts flying over the Sahara Desert spotted this giant eye staring back at them and thought they'd made the discovery of a lifetime. Unfortunately, there's no solid evidence linking this structure to Atlantis. It's believed to have formed from volcanic activity about 100 million years ago. But it does look suspicious, doesn't it? Still, we're no closer to knowing the truth. Imagine going back to about 3,300 BCE and finding yourself in South Asia. Welcome to the Harappan civilization. These people were way ahead of their time. They had cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, complete with baked brick houses, sophisticated drainage systems, and even public baths. This place might have had over 5 million people, making it one of the densest regions at the time. They also invented a system of standardized weights that was incredibly useful for traders. And trading they did. These people had connections stretching all the way to the Middle East, thanks to their great skills in metallurgy. They even had a form of ancient branding. The seals were used to stamp clay on trade goods. Despite being so advanced with a thriving urban life, there's a whole bunch of mystery shrouding their language and script. We've got bits and pieces of their writing, but no one's deciphered them yet, even with all the technology we have today. We also still don't know how exactly their society worked. It looks like they didn't flaunt their social status as much as other civilizations. No grand palaces or massive monuments. Instead, their largest buildings might have been granaries. They sure were practical. Unfortunately, all good things must come to an end. Around 1800 BCE, this bustling civilization started to decline, possibly due to shifts in river patterns. As the environment changed, the Harappans packed up, moving towards more hospitable lands. Ever heard of the Minotaur? The beast with a bull's head and a man's body, hunting the bravest travelers in a massive maze. Well, this wasn't just any old tale. It was one of the most popular dramas of the ancient world. And it was inspired by this place, the island of Crete. The Minoans lived here during the Bronze Age. They had stunning palaces, amazing frescoes, and a culture so rich it still fascinates historians to this day. They built places like Knossos, which was so complex with its multi-story buildings and elaborate hallways that it might have inspired the whole labyrinth myth. Their engineering was so ahead of its time that even their drainage systems were more advanced than what many of us have today. Let me know in the comments which of these stories you find the most fascinating, and thanks for watching. Scientists discovered something Atlantis-like near Australia. There used to be an entire continent that's now underwater. Here's what happened to it. Around 70,000 years ago, during the last ice age, there was a huge landmass called Sahul. It was located in the southwestern Pacific Ocean. This ancient supercontinent connected what we now know as Australia, New Guinea, Tasmania, and the Aru Islands into one giant piece of land. Imagine lush tropical rainforests surrounded by beautiful mountains. Sahul's tallest mountains were in the New Guinea highlands, with peaks reaching over 13,000 feet. This beautiful place was home to a variety of unique animals, most of which were pouched creatures. But back then, they weren't just koalas and kangaroos. Sahul was filled with different types of grazers, burrowers, scavengers, and predators. It was home to a huge diprotodon, a powerful hunter Thiosolio, and a horrifying Megalania, a creature that's much larger than any living lizard today. It was a unique place because the rest of the world was filled with placental animals at the time, like wolves, elephants, and humans. In Sahul, the only normal mammals were bats and rodents. But not all its parts were the same. The Timor, Arafura, and Carpentaria regions were covered by hot savanna and dry forests. It looked kinda like modern Australia, hot air deserts with scrubland, steppe, and temperate forests along the eastern coast. Back then, people were migrating all across the world. They made an incredible journey from Southeast Asia to Sahul and first arrived here from 60 to 45,000 years ago. They mostly traveled by foot and crossed the sea using bamboo rafts and simple boats. They came there from an ancient landmass called Sunda, which includes parts of Southeast Asia. They traveled across a series of islands known as Wallachia and eventually spread across Sahul. And it wasn't a small journey. Sahul was huge, around 4.1 million square miles. That's bigger than the USA or Canada. It stretched from the equator to around the southern part of New Zealand. So they arrived in what is now Australia and became Australia's first people. Scientists think that Sahul had a population of 500,000. We've discovered cave paintings that date back around 40,000 years. It's a hunting scene depicting an anoa, or miniature buffalo, facing figures of humans and animals. Researchers are trying to figure out how these early settlers moved across Sahul and where we might find archaeological evidence of their journey. To do this, they created a landscape evolution model. The simulation showed how Sahul changed between 75,000 and 35,000 years ago. It showed potential migration routes and archaeological sites. Humans likely traveled along coastlines and rivers. But how did Sahul get submerged off the coast of Australia, similar to the mythical Atlantis? During the last ice age, much of the Earth's water was locked up in large ice sheets and glaciers. The sea levels were much lower than they are today. After that, the global temperatures increased. The ice sheets melted and the sea levels rose, flooding the land bridges that once connected different parts of Sahul together. About 8,000 years ago, New Guinea separated from mainland Australia, and then, about 6,000 years ago, Tasmania did the same. We still can explore the underwater parts of Sahul thanks to new technology. Divers explore and collect samples directly from the ocean floor. Underwater drones can go to places that are too deep or dangerous for humans to explore. And with sonar mapping, scientists use sound waves to create maps of the ocean floor. It's like using an echo to see what's underwater. The sound waves bounce off the seabed and come back, helping us create a picture of what it looks like. Deep underwater, archaeologists have found stone tools and other artifacts. They also discovered fossils of animals like Diprotodon and Thylacoleo. By studying the underwater terrain of Sahul, they learned about the ancient rivers, lakes, and coastlines that existed during the Ice Age. But Sahul isn't the only underwater continent. Sahul isn't the only hidden gem of Southeast Asia. Take Sundaland, a place made up of Sumatra, Java, Borneo, and some other islands. This place was crazy huge during the Ice Age, but now almost fully underwater. Almost, but not entirely. The parts above the ocean are teeming with life. If you like birds, check this place out. It has almost a fifth of the world's bird species. You can spot colorful birds like the Java hawk eagle and the Bali starling among the lush forests. It's also a home to a fourth of Earth's fish species. Sundaland's waters are a haven for marine life, even the most exotic animals like the Asian arowanas. It's also a treasure trove of flowers. That's where you can find Rafflesia and Titan arum, the world's largest flowers. This makes it very similar to Zealandia. Zealandia is a long, narrow piece of land about half the size of Australia. It broke from Antarctica about 100 million years ago. Just like Sundaland, it isn't fully underwater. 7% of it stayed above sea level. This sticking out little piece is what we now call New Zealand, along with Stewart Island and some smaller islands. These pieces of Zealandia are lush and warm. They're packed with volcanoes, mountain ranges, beautiful natural geysers, and hot springs. Local people, Maori, use these hot springs for cooking. People place corn, eggs, and vegetables in baskets and lower them directly in the hot springs. Sometimes they cook food in a pit oven using heated rocks. Another hidden world is known as Argoland. This mysterious landmass was once part of Australia, back when dinosaurs chilled around. It drove scientists crazy for decades. They knew it existed because it left a huge stretch on the ancient seafloor, the Argo Abyssal Plain. About 155 million years ago, it broke off from Australia, saying bye-bye. The continent drifted somewhere north, and when it reached Southeast Asia, it just vanished. Scientists had no idea where it went, but recently they finally found its remains. Turns out, poor Argoland's lower parts started drowning into the Sunda Trench, a horrifyingly deep oceanic pit. The Earth's crust sunk into the mantle. Meanwhile, the upper parts of Argoland were pushed upward, grabbing the younger rocks on land. Because of this, Argoland broke apart into a bunch of smaller pieces. These pieces formed parts of Borneo, Java, Sulawesi, and other regions. The remains are buried under Indonesia and Myanmar. Imagine a colossal landmass the size of Greenland, Greater Adria. Its journey began about 240 million years ago when it broke away from the supercontinent Gondwana. It started moving north, and after 100 million years of enjoying the warm seas, it suddenly crashed into Europe and shattered into pieces. Most of these pieces went deep into the Earth's mantle, but some were scraped off and became part of mountain ranges like the Alps. Today, the remnants of Greater Adria are scattered across more than 30 countries, from Spain to Iran. That's why they're hard to look for. Seychelles was also once part of Gondwana. Yep, these idyllic islands are sitting atop of the ancient continent. We know a lot about it because of its fascinating granite outcrops. 100 years ago, Alfred Wegener discovered continental drift, but no one believed him. These granite outcrops helped him prove that he's not crazy and that tectonic plates really are moving. The Seychelles broke off from India and Madagascar and eventually became a sad loner in the Indian Ocean. This probably happened because of some insanely active volcanoes in the Deccan Traps. But now the islands are home to unique species both on land and in the coral reefs nearby. Mauritius broke off from India after the dinosaur wiping. Along its journey, it stretched into a long ribbon-like shape and also broke into pieces. Now it's all scattered beneath the Indian Ocean. Scientists stumbled upon this lost land by studying tiny ancient crystals called zircons. These zircons are like time capsules. They date back an astonishing 660 million to 2 billion years. That's even older than Mirages itself. These ancient crystals hinted that there's another Atlantis somewhere nearby. Turns out there are hidden continents all around the world, and maybe we'll discover more of them in the future.
Well, you're on a ship when you notice some water foaming nearby. It looks as if a huge vessel has just sunk there, but you don't see any debris. Steam is rising over the water and large bubbles appear on the surface. In a couple of minutes, you see a small piece of land appear right in front of your eyes. It's releasing flames and lava. Millions of gallons of water evaporate in the mouth of the volcano. Frightened, you get away from this place. For the next 3 years, the small island covered with volcanoes will be slowly emerging from the water. Every day, it'll erupt and fill the sky with black ash. When the ash settles, it'll get mixed with the water and form the shore. This eruption lasted 3 years, and finally, by 1967, the island of Surtsey on the southern coast of Iceland was fully formed. Surtsey is one of the few islands that have emerged from the depth to the surface of the sea. But it's almost impossible to get here. The island has a unique ecological system, and scientists want to find out how it's going to develop without human influence. Only a few people from all over the world have permission to walk around the island. This next place looks unwelcome from afar. We're now in Australia, in the Tasman Sea. Here, a huge ridge resembling a sharp fin of a giant shark sticks out of the water. The height of this mountain is 1,800 feet, which is almost twice the height of the Eiffel Tower. This place is called Ball's Pyramid. It's located in the center of an uninhabited volcanic island. It's difficult to get here because of the inaccessible rocky landscape of the place. The island was first discovered in 1788. At that time, I wasn't around then, it was considered barren and devoid of life. But more than 200 years later, in 2001, a group of scientists arrived at the island, and they found some incredible creatures there. They accidentally discovered the rarest insect in the world. It happened when the researchers reached the island, climbed to the height of more than 100 feet, and spotted a bush. Under it, they saw a colony of bugs known as land lobsters, or walking sausages. These creatures belong to the family of stick insects. Each of them is about 6 inches in length. This is the length of a spicy bratwurst. Add a little mustard and relish? Yum! Oops, back to bugs. That day, people found 27 insects, but since then, their population has begun to increase. These creatures were believed to have become extinct in the early 20th century. But to the contrary, they somehow managed to get to the Ball's Pyramid and survive. Our next stop is Brazil, almost 93 miles from the center of Sao Paulo. That's where you can find an island that's almost impossible to get to. But if you succeed, you're unlikely to leave it. It's called Snake Island. There's no other place on the planet with such a high concentration of snakes. According to researchers, there are about 5 snakes for 10 square feet of land there. They are the only owners of the island, since no other animals can survive among them. Snakes there are one of the most venomous species in the world, the golden lanceheads. These snakes are about 1.5 feet in length. Their venom is very powerful and fast-acting. If you let this reptile bite a raw piece of meat, the place around the bite will start to melt. Wow, count me out. Now imagine you're on this island and the snakes don't bite you. The most interesting thing that you can find there is an old lighthouse. It's hidden in the dense foliage of trees. People lived on the island a long time ago. Rumor has it that the last keepers were in the lighthouse when snakes broke in. No one has lived there ever since. How these unique snakes appeared on the island is still a mystery. The most popular legend claims that a pirate came there a long time ago. He hid a treasure somewhere on the island. Then he left the snakes in the spot where the chest was hidden. The pirate hoped the reptiles would scare people away from his gold coins and jewelry. Since then, a few snakes have managed to increase their population thousands of times, and some of them, reportedly, are wearing jewelry. Nah, not really. If you ever wanted to get to the island for some reason, the patrol services would stop you. Only a few people in special protective suits can get there to conduct scientific research. The next island is located 17 miles south of the center of Mexico City. You can easily get here. There are no poisonous animals, nobody guards the place, and the island's landscape allows you to moor a boat. But most likely, you'll want to leave this place as soon as you walk there for a while, especially if you arrive at night. Dolls are hooked on trees all over the island. These toys have different clothes, different sizes, and different faces. You can find dozens of dolls on almost every tree. In the middle of the 20th century, one of the residents of Mexico City moved to this island and began to fill it with toys. He picked the dolls up from landfills and canals all over the island. It took him several decades to decorate each tree. In the beginning, it looked strange and interesting. Thousands of tourists came here to see the island. Then, the dolls began to age and rot. Rains and hot sun deformed their faces. Covered with moss, they started to take terrible shapes. But the worst thing is that some people believe these dolls come to life at night. Imagine wandering alone on this island under the light of the moon and suddenly noticing a hanging doll without one eye. Ew! It's turning its head in your direction. A second later, you're already jumping into the boat and sailing away as fast as possible. One of the most unsafe and inaccessible places on Earth is located in the waters of the Bay of Bengal. This is North Sentinel Island. It's a small piece of land that looks like a tropical paradise. But you won't get here for two reasons. Since 1956, any trips to this island have been prohibited by law. There are always several ships going around and patrolling the area. The second reason is located on the island itself. Imagine you've managed to get past the patrol boats. You're sailing on a small boat to the shore. Crystal clear water surrounds you. You can even notice passing fish and beautiful coral reefs. Ahead, you see the golden coast and bright green trees, and among them, you notice small dots. You get closer, and an arrow whizzes by a few inches away from your face. The next arrow is stuck in the wooden hull of the boat. The dots you noticed before are people, the local Sentinelese tribe. They're standing with bows, releasing arrows, and throwing spears at you. They are screaming something and waving their hands. You understand they are not happy to see you and will do everything to prevent you from reaching the shore. The Sentinelese have long been isolated from the whole world and are now defending their island in such an assertive way. They don't seem to be afraid of anything. Once, a helicopter flew to the island, and the locals still threw their spears and shot arrows at it. It's forbidden to approach the place, not only because it's unsafe for tourists, but also to protect the local tribe from the dangers of civilizations. People from the continent can easily bring some disease to the island and infect its inhabitants. The locals don't have immunity, even from the flu or a simple cold, never mind smartphones. In addition, the island is surrounded by a coral reef, and this makes it very difficult for large ships to reach the shore. Despite all the prohibitions and the danger, many people have tried to get to the island. In 1880, an officer got to the shore and discovered that the soil there was ideal for growing coconut palms. The man also found several villages on the island, but didn't dare to meet with the locals. Eventually, he left this place, alive. Since then, many more attempts have been made to get to the island. Many times, researchers and travelers gave the islanders gifts, like fish or coconuts. The locals accepted these presents, asked for more, but still didn't allow foreigners to approach their homes. It's also difficult to make friends with the local tribe because they communicate in one of the most complex languages in the world. Scientists and linguists have been studying it for decades. And at the end of the 20th century, some researchers managed to make friends with the Sentinelese. In 1991, the islanders were invited to board a large ship. A team of anthropologists gave them bags with coconuts. Only several members of the tribe accepted the gifts. For centuries, the Sentinelese have been living on their own, far from civilization. And almost nobody wants to change this situation. What, and pass up the internet, fried food, and Facebook? You're kidding. Imagine you're a movie director looking for beautiful landscapes to shoot a movie. You walk along the picturesque Paraná River and find a perfectly round island in its delta. It's slightly larger than a soccer field. You come back a few days later and see that the island has changed its position. It's moved a little to the side and spun around its axis. This is what happened to Argentinian director Sergio Newspiller in 2016. He discovered an island that constantly moves around its axis. He called it the Eye. If you look at it from a bird's eye view, you'll see that it's similar to a slowly moving eye. It's like nature itself is looking at you. The doctor forgot about his initial movie idea and decided to make a documentary about this island. You can find the Eye in the northeastern part of Argentina, or you can open Google Maps and type El Hoyo to see it. No one had known much about this place before the director found it. Perhaps there are many such moving islands on the planet. If you look at satellite images of this area, you can see other similar pieces of land inside lakes, but they're not so round and don't rotate. Surprisingly, scientists haven't yet solved the secret of the bizarre island. The most popular theory says that underground wells create strong water flows and change the current that pushes the island from side to side. When the Eye collides with the ground, it bounces off like a ball, causing parts of its muddy shores to break off. But not everyone looks for a scientific explanation for this natural phenomenon. Some locals believe that the island is part of some kind of technology created by space civilizations. Ooh. Our next stop is the smallest island in the world. No one can even step on it because of its size. So, here's Vancouver Island in the Canadian province of British Columbia. Fairy Lake is located here. Look at the water. You may not notice the island at first. Technically, it's not even an island. It's just a piece of log sticking out of the water. This log is covered with moss and grass. But the most incredible thing is that a tiny Douglas fir grows on this piece of wood. The photo of this tree has won many awards and became famous worldwide. It shows how desperately nature can strive for survival. Every day, many tourists sail around this island and get inspiration from it. The next island looks ominous and lifeless. It's the perfect place to build a hut and write horror novels using an old typewriter. The place is called Ball's Pyramid. It's located in the waters of Australia in the Tasman Sea. You can see this colossal fin sticking out of the water from afar. This is a sharp stone ridge with a height of 1,800 feet, almost twice the size of the Eiffel Tower, in the center of an uninhabited volcanic island. It's dangerous to approach the place and step ashore because of its slippery stone surface. Scientists come here with special equipment and probably some good boots with traction. The purpose of their visits is a mystery that lies in the heart of the ridge. It was first discovered in 1788. The navigators who found it considered the island lifeless, and so it was believed for more than 200 years. But then, in 2001, people decided to examine the place again. A group of scientists arrived there and found one of the rarest insects in the world. At the height of more than 100 feet, a small bush grew. A colony of land lobsters, also called walking sausages, was hiding there. These are critters from the family of stick insects. They look pretty creepy, since each of them is about 6 inches in size, which is the average size of a sausage. The bodies of these six-paw beetles are covered with a hard brown shell. Scientists found 27 insects, and their population keeps growing. These creatures were considered extinct at the beginning of the 20th century. Scientists still don't know how these beetles got to this remote, harsh place and how they managed to survive there. The next unusual place is probably the most isolated and one of the most mysterious in the world. Welcome to Bouvet Island, located in the southern Atlantic Ocean, 1,600 miles from the coast of South Africa and 1,100 miles from Antarctica. It's possible to get there only if some big ship is passing by. An ordinary motorboat won't be able to reach this place because of the cold temperature and icebergs. The island is completely covered with ice and has a volcano crater in its center. You won't find anyone living there except penguins and seals. One French explorer discovered the island in 1739, but then its coordinates were lost. People found this place again only at the beginning of the 19th century. But people set foot on the shore of this island for the first time only in 1927. Then, closer to the 50s, they decided to build a weather station on it. Researchers came there and found something strange on the icy surface of the island. And it wasn't due to the penguins and seals. It was a lifeboat lying in a small lagoon among the seals. It was in good condition. Not far from the boat, they found oars and an empty copper container. Perhaps some ship went down nearby, and the survivors reached the island in this boat. But the researchers found no traces of people. Until now, this boat remains a big mystery. How about visiting an island that doesn't exist? It's in the South Pacific Ocean near Australia and New Caledonia. It's called Sandy Island. It was first discovered in 1876. Researchers began putting it on maps at the beginning of the 20th century. But when people arrived at the specified coordinates, they found no island. So by 1970, people had removed it from all the maps released at that time. Then, in 2012, Sandy Island appeared again, this time on Google Maps. The researchers came there, but still found nothing. Maybe it had gone underwater. With the help of echolocation devices, they explored the seabed, but didn't notice any signs of an island. They found out that it appeared on the maps because of human error when printed cards were being transferred to digital ones. The mistake was quickly corrected, but a trace of it remained. If you enter these coordinates into Google Maps, you'll see a mysterious black spot in the middle of the ocean. And that's precisely where I am narrating this story. Nah. How did people discover it in 1876? Most likely it was an underwater volcano that woke up and spewed some magma out. In the cold water, it solidified and turned into pumice. So people on that ship must have noticed huge floating pieces of volcanic rock and mistook them for an island. Our next island could be a new continent, but turned into nothing. At the beginning of the 20th century, famous marine explorer Robert Peary, the first in history to reach the North Pole, went on an expedition to the northernmost Canadian island, Ellesmere. He was on the shore, looking through his binoculars at the ocean. In the distance, amid the white snow, he noticed the white peaks of a giant island stretching across the horizon. The traveler didn't have enough food and fuel to get there and check out this land. He wrote the coordinates in his diary and went back to the mainland. Together with other researchers, they concluded that he had found not just an island, but a new continent. A few years later, Robert Peary organized a new expedition to that place. But this time, he couldn't find the mysterious icy land. The ship stayed in cold waters for several days, drifting from side to side. The crew was running out of food and fuel. They were about to go back, but then they noticed those snowy peaks again. The joy of discovery was quickly replaced by disappointment. Those peaks were just fog. Under the influence of cold air and the sun's rays, the fog looked like an island at a certain angle. When the ship approached it, the island dissolved like a mirage. Oh well. Sandy Island is a creepy landmass that appeared on world maps for nearly 200 years before vanishing into thin air. Located in the South Pacific between Australia and New Caledonia, this phantom island was first documented by explorers in the 18th century and continued to pop up on maps and even scientific surveys. But when a research ship sailed through its supposed coordinates in 2012, they found nothing but open water. They even measured the ocean depth at this spot, and it was always more than 4,000 feet deep, so there was no chance of a big piece of land could be hiding under the water. To make things even weirder, when you look up its exact coordinates on Google Earth, you'll still see a faint outline of what looks like a long, thin island, but with no landmass in sight. Theories about its disappearance talk about possible cartography errors, but the mystery of how a whole island fooled the world for centuries is still unsolved. Now, speaking of mysterious islands, let's dive into the enigma of Hashima Island. Located off the coast of Nagasaki, Japan, this small island was once a bustling coal mining facility, thriving with workers and families. But as the demand for coal declined, the island was abandoned in the 1970s, leaving behind a haunting ghost town. Today, Hashima stands eerily silent, with crumbling concrete buildings and overgrown vegetation. And if you are brave enough, you can do a virtual tour using Google Earth. But there are other places where digital maps won't let you see much, like the Ward Islands in Australia. If you search for its coordinates, you'll notice a bunch of blackout spots near the coast. This has led to all sorts of wild speculation online, sparking curiosity about what might be hidden beneath the surface. I mean, is it just a glitch? Or could there really be some unusual wildlife down there? Well, we still don't have concrete answers for these obscured areas, but it is worth mentioning that this region is part of a wilderness protection area. This place is an important zone for the Australian sea lion and the New Zealand fur seal, for example. So, these blackout spots could be just part of a plan to keep everything private and protected out there. From creepy islands to abandoned places, if you ever find yourself driving through Rio de Janeiro, you might catch a glimpse of something unsettling: a group of creepy Santas, faded candy canes, and rusty slides surrounded by palm trees and dense greenery. This is Parque Aba Noel, an eerie, abandoned Christmas-themed amusement park in Brazil. The park's creator had big dreams, thinking it would become a massive, eclectic attraction with different themed areas. We're talking about a space the size of 460 football fields. Work started in 2000, but the place shut down a few years later after the creator tragically passed away in a car accident just meters from the park's entrance. Today, the attractions are slowly being taken over by rust. This totally feels like something out of a sci-fi movie, but those multicolored rings are actually right here on Earth, in Yellowstone National Park to be exact. At 370 feet in diameter, it is the largest hot spring in the United States and the third largest in the world. When you see it from above, the different colors come from various types of bacteria that act like real-life thermographic filters. Each type of bacteria thrives at different temperatures, and their colors reflect the heat levels in different parts of the spring. Our next stop is in Italy, where you can find the Villa de Vecchi, also known as the Red House or the Ghost Mansion. For every ghost mansion, there's an urban legend behind it. Now, while nothing we're about to say is confirmed, the tale is still pretty interesting and downright bizarre. Built in the mid-19th century by Count Felix de Vecchi, this once grand summer residence quickly became the site of tragedy. The Count's wife passed away under mysterious circumstances, and his daughter disappeared, never to be seen again. Devastated, the Count is said to have spent his remaining days searching for answers. Over the years, the mansion fell into ruin, with local legends adding to its haunted reputation. Some claim to hear strange noises or see ghostly figures, while others whisper about unusual rituals that might have taken place there. Though crumbling and overgrown, Villa de Vecchi remains popular for those intrigued by its eerie history. While we've explored eerie and abandoned human-made structures, let's take a look at a place where nature's forces left their own massive mark: the Meteor Crater in Arizona. The site was formed in an instant about 50,000 years ago, when a large iron-nickel meteorite slammed into Earth. Measuring just under a mile wide and 560 feet deep, the crater is one of the best-preserved impact sites in the world. Standing at its edge, you can almost picture the incredible force of the impact, wiping out everything around it. Today, the meteor crater is a fascinating geological landmark, drawing in scientists and curious visitors. From a Google Earth point of view, this area in Niger looks creepy, and what seems to be clusters of glass domes dotting the landscape, almost like an interplanetary colony. But in reality, it's kind of an illusion. Those domes are actually small semicircular pits, and they're part of the Just Dig It project. Can you dig it? These pits, known as water buns or earth smiles, are dug to capture rainwater and restore dry, degraded land. It's a simple but genius method that helps bring life back to areas suffering from desertification. By trapping water, these buns allow vegetation to grow again, cooling the land and reviving ecosystems. Now, you have probably heard of the famous Nazca lines in Peru, right? We're talking about those massive ancient geoglyphs carved into the desert, which have shapes like a spider, a monkey, and a hummingbird. Well, recently, something similar popped up, and it's got the internet buzzing. This new figure, located at the top of a mountain, looks a lot like a wild boar. While it's super cool to find a potential new geoglyph, the lack of solid info and the not-so-sharp edges make us think it's just a natural formation. It's still pretty intriguing, though. But if you head down south to Chile, that's where you'll actually find a real geoglyph. We're talking about the Atacama Giant, which is around 390 feet tall. What looks like a funny drawing seems to represent some sort of spiritual figure or deity. There's no solid proof of what it actually means, but experts believe this design might have worked as an early astronomical calendar. The points on the top and sides of the head are said to indicate the seasons based on how they align with the moon. Meanwhile, you might also find some mysterious shipwrecks while exploring Google Earth, like the MV Plassey in Ireland. This ship met its tragic fate back in 1960, when a heavy storm and strong winds blew it ashore at Finnis Rock, tearing a hole in the vessel's bottom. Water started rushing in from underneath. After some shouting and running in all directions, the crew managed to get out of the ship. Today, the vessel's remains are still at Finnis Rock and have become a popular attraction. You can still see its hull, which keeps falling apart over time, making the whole scene even creepier. And we've also got something interesting involving the Titanic. Now, it's true that the ship is really 13,000 feet underwater, so you actually can't see it with satellite cameras. But if you type these coordinates into Google Earth, you'll find the spot of the Titanic accident. It's not that creepy of a place. I mean, it's really just a huge expanse of blue. But still, it's pretty interesting to get the big picture of how they seem so far from everything on that tragic night when the ship went down. The Azores are 9 islands in the Atlantic Ocean, sitting about a third of the way from Europe to North America. A history textbook will tell you that the Portuguese explorers discovered this beautiful archipelago in the 15th century. Until then, they were uninhabited. The islands still belong to Portugal, so there seems to be no controversy or mystery here, except for the fact that some researchers think the Azores were home to an ancient civilization from thousands of years ago. Others support the idea that the famous Atlantis itself was here. In 2010, archaeologists announced that they found some structures on the islands which looked like they were from the Stone Age. If that's true, it would mean that there was a civilization back then which was advanced enough to travel this far and settle on the remote islands. A special scientific commission studied the matter and concluded that those structures were natural rock formations or had a more modern origin. So the first settlers were supposed to have been the Portuguese. It didn't stop some enthusiastic scientists from further research. They analyzed the DNA of mice from the Azores and found that it had the same genetic characteristics as house mice from Northern Europe. The little rodents couldn't have sailed this far without humans, so it looks like the first people had arrived at the Azores before the Portuguese. And the plot thickens. Dr. Felix Rodriguez, who works at the University of the Azores, is determined to find out exactly when it happened. He's studying the megalithic structures found in the Azores. Similar structures found in Western Europe and the Mediterranean date back to the Neolithic age. According to Dr. Rodriguez, the oldest findings are from 4,200 years ago. It's not clear when civilizations left them. The professor identified 7 megalithic structures in one complex as dolmens for the deceased. The cavities are all cylindrical in shape and definitely don't look like a natural formation. The material from the cavities turned out to be at least 2,500 years old. There are also some pieces of ceramics that seem to be even older. It looks like the rocks in the area had been lifted. You can see it by the small waves left by lava. It's thick and sticky, so it can't leave vertical marks. Someone must have moved the rock from its horizontal position. Another interesting finding is some stone anchors with holes found by the sea. Similar ones were used in the Mediterranean and on the Atlantic coast of Europe, dating back to 1000 and 2000 BCE. The 15th century Portuguese were advanced sailors and never used stone anchors, only metal ones. The scientists also managed to find a structure built right in the volcanic tuff. It looks somewhat similar to the ones built in the Mediterranean that are at least 2,000 years old. These structures are called columbariums and were used to store the ashes of the deceased. They also found something resembling an oven next to it, so they could be a part of one complex. There's also a basin in the middle, and it's not the only one on the island. It looks like they had a special meaning to their builders. There are channels around the construction. They connect the 4 basins, and the sun lights each of them at different times of the year. It was all carefully planned, as they were lit the brightest during winter and summer solstices and autumn and spring equinoxes. The water passed through all the basins and went directly into the sea. It could have been a purifying ritual. Now, some people are skeptical about the findings and believe they're all parts of a fortress from the 16th century. Professor Rodriguez is determined to prove it's all much, much older. There must have been some ancient civilization here that could have left because of the volcanoes that go crazy every 50 years. Antonietta Costa, a postdoctoral student at the University of Porto in Portugal, is also sure that the first people came to the Azores in prehistoric times. She has studied standing stones with small openings, explained as cuts for quarrying the stones. Costa believes they are part of a calendar system. She noticed that none of the slits in the rocks were aligned with the cardinal east direction. The slits closest to it are smaller than the ones facing other directions, so it can't be just a coincidence. It also looks like the slits are aligned with the solstices, and that's what makes Costa think it could be a calendar. She also thinks the inscriptions left on slabs of bedrock on the islands are much like those maps that were left on the rocks during the Stone Age in mainland Europe. Another interesting theory about the Azores is that it could have been the location of the famous Atlantis, which was lost under the sea. Since the Azores archipelago is in the middle of an ocean, it could technically be a perfect place for that. A 20th century scholar quoted Plato to prove this theory was right. The Greek philosopher suggested that Atlantis was in between the continents. The coins and sculptures supposedly found in the Azores when the Portuguese just arrived also point that there was someone else present there. And way more recently, in 2013, a sailor found a huge structure looking like a pyramid off the Azores coast. It was most likely a large submarine volcano, but it's much cooler to think it was some big deal in Atlantis, right? Peru has its own mystery. Amid the desert, you can find some eerie marks called the Nazca lines. They're known as geoglyphs and were created more than 2,000 years ago by the people of the Nazca culture. Thanks to a dry climate and strong winds in the desert, most of the Nazca lines have reached our day. To create them, Nazca people removed the top layer of the pebbles and revealed the soil beneath the ground. The color of the soil changes from reddish-brown to yellowish-gray, so the lines always look different. Most of the geoglyphs depict plants and animals. You can clearly see a monkey, a whale, a condor, a hummingbird, a spider, various flowers, trees, and other plants. There are also some geometric shapes, such as triangles, trapezoids, and spirals. Since they were discovered in the 1920s, scientists have offered different explanations for the lines. Some say that in Nazca culture, people ascribe special significance to these motifs, so they probably created these shapes for deities in the sky to see. Others believe they were a sort of astronomical calendar, and animal sketches were modeled after groups of stars. This theory was proved wrong, so the purpose of the lines remains a mystery. Another place that leaves many questions is Nimrut Mountain in Turkey. This mountain has a complex of monuments with temples and tombs. It was built by the Kingdom of Commagene, which ruled here around the 1st century BCE. There are statues of King Antiochus, 2 lions, 2 eagles, Zeus, Hercules, and Apollo. Archaeologists found the ruins of this complex at the end of the 19th century. They thought it had been built by the Assyrians. Then, some of the most famous scientists of the time came here and found an inscription in Greek. It had details about the sculptures and the names of important members of the Commagene royal family. It looked like it had been put there for future visitors. The scientists established that the statues used to be full-size figures. Changes in temperature, strong winds, snow, and the bright sun didn't leave them a chance to last in all their original glory. Plus, the complex is in an earthquake zone, so all you can see now is mostly the heads of the statues. They look incredibly complex and large for their time. The biggest question is, how did the people who lived thousands of years ago manage to create such huge sculptures on top of the mountain? It's obvious that they worked on shaping the limestone blocks up there and not on the ground. So, stay tuned. We'll keep an eye on this.
Even in 2023, you can still find places where modern humans have never been. Imagine living on one of such isolated islands. You wouldn't know about modern civilization or have seen a person from the outside world. One such island is located in the Bay of Bengal in India. It's called North Sentinel Island, and getting there is strictly forbidden by law since the mid-20th century. Even if you try to reach there, the Indian Coast Guard won't allow it. But that's not the only hurdle you'll face. Say you have decided to reach this island in a small boat. The water is crystal clear, and you can see all sorts of fish swimming around as well as some gorgeous coral reefs. And then you see the island in the distance. It looks like a dream come true. But before you can even think about getting any closer, you notice some dots on the shore. Suddenly, something whizzes past you and lands in the water. Wait a minute, is that an arrow? Yep, and the next one hits the side of your boat. Looks like someone on the island really doesn't want visitors. Turns out the dots on the shore are people, the local Sentinelese tribe, armed with spears and bows. They start shouting something at you in a language you can't understand, but their gestures imply that you should leave immediately. If that wasn't clear enough, they throw spears and shoot arrows at you. Yeah, that's definitely a clue you're not welcome here. It's not just you they're aggressive towards, though. They're known for guarding their island fiercely and don't want anyone else to come in. Even helicopters can be attacked when they fly too close. That's why the authorities have made it illegal to visit the island. It's not just to keep tourists safe, but also to protect the islanders themselves. The Sentinelese people have lived in isolation for thousands of years, and they have no immunity to modern diseases. Even a simple cold could wipe them out. Despite the risks, some people have tried to make contact with the Sentinelese tribe. They want to befriend them and learn about their way of life. And in some cases, they have succeeded, but it's definitely not recommended. You never know how the locals will react. Interestingly, North Sentinel Island was visited by an officer named Maurice Vidal Portman in 1880. He found that the island was surrounded by coral reefs and limestone, and had fertile soil perfect for growing coconut palms. He spotted several villages on the island, but didn't approach the locals or explore the island further. Maybe he sensed that it was best to leave this paradise alone. In the past, researchers have attempted to establish friendly relationships with them by offering them fish as gifts, which the locals accepted, but still refused to allow any visitors to approach their home. Despite their complicated language, modern people were able to communicate with the islanders over several decades, and in 1991, one of the locals approached the boat that was carrying the gifts for the tribe and accepted them. In the same year, a group of locals even boarded the boat and took a bag of coconuts brought to them by a team of anthropologists. This was one of the last positive interactions with the tribe, as India's government has prohibited any interaction with the Sentinelese for their safety. There is another beautiful island located 25 miles off the coast of Brazil, which has a lighthouse that serves as evidence of modern humans' presence. However, there are no people on the island, and the Coast Guard occasionally check the lighthouse to ensure that no strangers have visited the place. People are not allowed to visit this island for their own good since it can be dangerous. So, what's wrong with Snake Island? The name will give you a hint. It's got like 4,000 snakes all over the place. Basically, one every 10 square feet. They slither on the ground and hang from the trees. And these are not just any snakes, but some of the most venomous in the world. They're called golden lanceheads, and they only live on this island. The snakes are so savage that they specialize on hunting birds that come here to rest during their long flights. The island used to be connected to Brazil, but it got separated by the sea about 10,000 years ago, and since then these snakes have ruled the roost. They're the kings of the island, and they have no predators to fear, but they don't have a lot of food options either, so they evolved to have super venomous bites to take down their prey easily. Anyway, enough about snakes. Let me tell you about another creepy island in Mexico. It is located in one of the canals in the area called Xochimilco, just 11 miles away from Mexico City. It's not forbidden to visit or anything, but it's pretty scary anyway. So have you heard of the Island of the Dolls? It's a creepy place filled with dolls hanging from trees and buildings. A guy in the 50s moved here alone from Mexico City and started hanging them up, and continued to do so for decades, making the place look like a haunted doll graveyard. But wait, it gets even creepier. The dolls have deteriorated over time, covered in moss and turned green. Some say they come to life at night. If that doesn't give you the heebie-jeebies, I don't know what will. Now let me tell you about Bouvet Island, one of the most mysterious places on Earth. It's located in the South Atlantic Ocean, 1,600 miles away from South Africa and 1,100 miles from Antarctica. It's super difficult to reach, and normally you can only do so from large ships passing by. The island is almost entirely covered by a glacier, and at its center, there is a volcanic crater. The only inhabitants of this place are penguins and seals. It's a perfect location for someone who wants to be alone, away from civilization. It was discovered in 1739 by a French explorer, but they didn't write down the location, so for almost 70 years nobody knew where it was. In the early 19th century, it was rediscovered, but it wasn't until 1927 that someone actually set foot on its shores. Fast forward to the mid-20th century, and some people decide to build a weather station there. When they arrived, they found something super weird, an empty lifeboat just chilling in a lagoon with a bunch of seals. It was in good shape, and there were oars and a buoyancy tank nearby. There weren't any markings or signs of who it belonged to, but it seemed like whoever had been on it had escaped from a wrecked ship. Strange thing though, there were no footprints or signs of people on the island, so where did the sailors go? Nobody knows. Let's finish with a completely safe and cute island in the Bahamas called Pig Beach. It's not the official name of the place, but everyone calls it this way because the island is home to lots of pigs. They spend their days swimming, sunbathing on the beach, exploring the jungle, and begging tourists for food. What's really cool is that you can stay at a hotel on a nearby island and take a boat to visit the pigs. They're super friendly and love attention, especially when there's food involved. And thanks to the kindness of tourists and locals, these cute little pink and brown piglets are able to survive on the island. No one knows for sure how the pigs ended up on the island. According to legend, they survived a shipwreck and swam to safety on Pig Beach. There are also a few cats and goats on the island, which adds to the animal farm vibes it's giving out. So if you're looking for a unique and adorable experience, Pig Beach is definitely worth a visit. Just remember to bring some snacks for the piggies.
There's a tiny island surrounded by the stunning clear Red Sea and a bustling underwater world. Submerged, also known as St. John's Island, has no trees and consists mostly of peridotite, which is rich in peridot. And before you Google it, peridotite is a gemstone that has the nickname the Evening Emerald because of its sparkling green hue. Some historians believe Cleopatra herself loved peridots, and that lady could afford any jewels in the world. Geologists believe peridot forms as a result of the spreading of the seafloor. When the Earth's crust decides to part ways, rocks from deep down get pushed up to the surface. That's exactly how our treasure island formed. The African and the Asiatic continental plates bumped into each other, and rocks in the lower crust went above sea level. Peridot also comes from meteorites that have crashed into Earth, but that's really rare. Its color ranges from a brown-green color to yellowish-green to pure green. Yellowish-green is the most common shade you'll see in jewelry. This color is possible thanks to a good amount of iron in the stone. The deposits of this beauty are spread all across the world, from Vietnam to Arizona and Hawaii, Tanzania, South Africa, Sri Lanka, and Norway. And then, of course, there's Submerged. So, this place is geologically unique as it's an island built of uplifted mantle, and it's also the oldest and longest known source of peridots in the world. The first people came here for the gemstones many centuries ago. Famous Roman philosopher Pliny the Elder mentioned in his writings that pirates had discovered Submerged's treasures in the year 500 before the current era. The beautiful green rocks made their way to Queen Bernice of the Roman Empire. They came from the ancient trading port Berenike on the edge of Egypt's eastern desert. When the city fell in the 6th century, all work stopped and the island with all its treasures stood alone for hundreds of years. In the 19th century, British explorers found the beautiful green island in the Red Sea and figured out it was the one described by Pliny the Elder a long time ago. Turkey did some mining here in the 20th century. Over just 4 years, they managed to collect over $2 million in peridot. They sent the gemstones to France for cutting. The work conditions on the island were nothing like a tropical fairy tale you could imagine. There was no drinking water for workers, so they had to install a gas-powered water condenser. Now, this territory belongs to the Elba National Park System. Most people come here to see the underwater beauties of the reefs. But if you look above the water, you can still see some beautiful sparkling peridots. If Christmas Island in Australia is on your travel list, plan the trip wisely. If you end up there in October or November when the wet season begins, you won't be able to enjoy a walk around. Red crabs cover the whole island like a blanket. And it's not one of those fluffy blankets you want to wrap yourself into. Over 100 million crabs are on a mission to reach the shore alive, marking a crucial phase in their life cycle. For the majority of the year, these red crabs reside in burrows and rock crevices. They have fruits, berries, fallen leaves, and various organic matter to keep them going. But when the dry season is over and the moon is in a specific phase, they know it's time to go. When they reach the coast of the Indian Ocean after several days of migration, they create deep burrows where females will eventually hatch their eggs. Once the burrows are ready, the male crabs return to the rainforests and the females stay at the beach for at least 12 days to keep the family going. The new parents are so smart, they follow the moon to pick the perfect moment with a milder tide to carry their eggs to the water. Once they hatch, the crabs bring their new family members back inland. There, they wait for the rainy season again to keep the circle of life going. To safeguard this magic, authorities close road in areas where crab migration takes place. Japan has a brand new addition to its archipelago. The world's newest landmass literally popped up in November 2023. This unnamed island is just over 300 feet in diameter. It's made of pumice and tuff left by an undersea volcano that kicked off its eruptions in October. The volcanic hustle has quieted down since then, and the waves are eroding chunks of the newly found land. Without lava flows to create a sturdy protective crust over the soft volcanic debris, the future of this freshly formed island is unstable. Similar islands had popped up before but were short-lived and vanished once volcanic activity ceased. An island born in 2021 the same way is still visible today though, so the newborn island might have some life prospects. If not, we're likely to see more territories like this. Japan is super rich in active volcanoes on land, with over 100 in its collection. If you make friends with the Uros people living in the Lake Titicaca area and ask them for their address to send a postcard, they will have a hard time answering. Their ancestors from more than 500 years ago came up with a brilliant invention to protect themselves from the Incas. They built islands from totora roots and reeds that could be moved away from danger deep into the lake. Totora plants help the local community a lot since it's water resistant and is used for all sorts of things, from building boats to roofs and mattresses. The islets are even edible, and the flowers of the plant they're made of are used for tea. So there are around 120 islets still preserved, and over 1,000 people can live on them. From 2 to 6 families share one islet home. Since there's no need to run away from the Incas anymore, they need to make sure the islets stay in one place. Every 15 to 20 days, the reeds forming the islets decay and need to be replaced. To prevent constant drifting, locals use eucalyptus rods as anchors, firmly securing the islets. Despite their small size, these islets have 2 spoken languages. The residents craft their fabric and create stunning outfits. Solar panels provide sufficient power for them to have light and even TVs. The main islet has a radio station, and the locals have embraced tourism. You can make a reservation online and experience the floating life yourself. Some islands pop out of nowhere, and others disappear without a trace. One of the most famous so-called phantom islands is High Brazil off the coast of Ireland. Before you ask, no, it doesn't have anything to do with Brazil. High is a variation of I, which means island, and Brazil comes from the root bres, meaning mighty, great, beautiful in Irish, and it gave the name to one of the local deities. This tiny mist-covered island was first mapped in 1325, but later attempts to pinpoint its exact location didn't come to one result. So, legend has it that the island appears only once in 7 years, and even those who claim to have seen it say they had just sailed right through it without bumping into any land. Captain John Nisbet shared the story of how he had not only spotted High Brazil, but got stranded on it with his crew. According to him, the island boasted a castle and was mostly uninhabited. There was even an encounter with an ancient grave gentleman who shared the island's ancient history over a lavish feast. In the late 15th century, a series of expeditions set sail from Bristol to find the famous island. All attempts failed, and High Brazil disappeared from the maps in 1865. We might never find out if it was there in the first place, but it's a beautiful story anyway.
It's 2010. You're in the Japanese waters of the Pacific Ocean, about 745 miles south of Tokyo and very close to the island of Iwo Jima. The sky is clear. There are almost no waves. A heavy, low rumble comes from somewhere deep under the sea. It scares away all the flying gulls. And then it gets quiet. Too quiet. It seems that even light waves don't dare to make a sound. Suddenly, a small bubble rises to the surface of the water. Then, thousands of air bubbles start moving up, one after another. The water begins to boil and heat up. Its temperature is so high that you can cook eggs or pasta in here. The boiling area grows to the size of a stadium. A huge amount of steam is released into the air. You can see an outline of some huge object through the boiling water. Then, everything stops. The water cools. The amount of bubbles goes down, and the surface of the ocean becomes calm again. That year, an underwater volcano erupted at that specific location. Fortunately, it didn't bring any serious consequences. In August 2021, the eruption repeated. But this time, everything wasn't limited to the bubbling water. The Japanese Coast Guard reported strong volcanic activity in the region. Hot steam and gases came out of the water and rose into the air to a height of 10 miles, which is about twice the height of Mount Everest. The huge awakened volcano began to slowly lift to the surface. If you took a helicopter ride above this place, you'd see more and more land coming out of the water. This is not just a volcano, it's a whole island in the shape of a horseshoe. And this is just the beginning. Seismologists say this island is the tip of a huge volcano. It fills the sky with smoke and ash. The air temperature is rising. Scientists continue to monitor the situation. They believe the volcano can completely get out of the water. Nobody knows what consequences this may have. This isn't the first island that has appeared in the waters of Japan. Underwater volcanoes have erupted several times over the past century. One of the most surprising cases occurred in 2013. That year, a small piece of land was formed next to the already existing island. The underwater volcano that emerged from the water began to grow slowly. At some moment, it connected to the island. After 2 years, the area of this island increased by 12 times compared to the original size. Smoke is always pouring out of this place, and its surface is filled with red-hot lava flows. The volcano is unstable and isn't going to calm down. Such phenomena occur not only off the coast of Japan. In the 1960s, a volcano awoke on the southern coast of Iceland. For 3 whole years, it was coming to the surface and had formed an island by 1967. They called it Surtsey. Unlike the Japanese islands, this is where the volcanic eruptions ended. Now the island is one of the most inaccessible places on the planet. Only a few scientists in the world have permission to walk around this place. They want to learn how the plant and animal life of the island are formed without human intervention. This is a unique event, and here's why. Underwater volcanoes differ in their behavior from land volcanoes. They don't explode and don't release lava flows upwards. A huge amount of water above them creates high pressure. As soon as the magma gets out, the water immediately lowers it to the seafloor. Underwater eruptions don't normally cause any changes on the ocean surface. So, millions of gallons of lava sink to the bottom, cool down, and solidify around the volcano. This lava forms a thick layer of Earth's rock. To make an island appear on the surface, an underwater volcano needs a lot of magma. The next eruption creates another thick layer. Millions of years pass, and passive lava flows form mountains. Constant eruptions increase the height of the seabed. Layer by layer, the cooled lava rises higher and higher, and then, one day, it appears on the surface in the form of an island. Often, underwater volcanoes don't reach the surface and fall asleep forever. Such volcanoes are called seamounts. The tectonic activity also affects the formation of islands. The volcano has a source of magma that comes from the mantle of the planet. The tectonic plate is moving, and a volcano is placed on it, so the plate can lead the volcano away from the source of magma. When a volcano rises, it can simply move aside and no longer erupt. From the outside, the volcanic islands look like an apocalypse, lava spraying in different directions, smog and ash filling the sky. But in fact, volcanoes are not about destruction, but the creation of new life. Lava is any hot metal, but the natural lava flowing out of volcanoes is called magma. When it appears on the surface of the ground, various gases and acids instantly evaporate from it, and magma becomes lava. But underground, it's magma. These molten metals contain trace elements of almost all chemical substances that exist in nature. They enrich the land they're flowing in. Ash is also filled with many different elements. The lava hardens, the ash settles, and this creates favorable conditions for the appearance of a rich ecosystem. It can take millions of years to develop, though. The simplest bacteria appear. They feed on chemical elements coming from the volcano. When you have favorable conditions for bacteria, you get favorable conditions for bigger life forms. Birds flying by also help to develop the new ecosystem. They build nests on the island, bring tree seeds and plant spores from the continents and other islands. All this enriches life on the volcano. Volcanoes are isolated places, so unique species of animals, insects, and bacteria can appear only there and can't be found anywhere else on the planet. However, if the volcano wakes up, it can also destroy the ecosystem. The entire island can be covered with ash and simply lose all vegetation. But then, on the scorched ground, life can appear again. Hundreds of islands around the world appeared because of the eruptions of underwater volcanoes. Hawaii, Indonesia, and Iceland have them on their territory. Imagine that people settled on a similar volcanic island and built a city there. And one day, the volcano woke up. It once happened 200 miles south of Tokyo. People built a beautiful town right in the center of an active volcano on the island of Aogashima. In May 1785, the catastrophe began. That day was sunny, and no one could imagine what tragedy was approaching them. At some point, thousands of birds took to the air and flew away from the island. Then, the ground began to shake. A heavy, low sound came out of the town depths. Streams of smoke were coming out of the crater of a green volcano. The volcano was throwing dirt, large stones, and various debris into the sky. The disaster lasted for several weeks. Since then, more than 200 years have passed, and the volcano has never woken up again. The town was rebuilt after the disaster. Now, this place is so great, people don't want to leave, despite the risk of a new eruption. More and more residents are coming to the island. There are many thermal springs, and the waters around the island are rich in fish. But the volcano may wake up at any moment. Fortunately, meteorological and seismological services monitor the situation. A lake can also form inside the volcano, but you shouldn't swim in it. In Indonesia, on the island of Java, there's a volcano with a crater inside. It's filled with turquoise water. The magma inside the volcano consists of many molten metals and chemical compounds, and the lake gets these substances. The volcano emits sulfur dioxide gases that combine with the metallic lake. This gives the water its strong acidity and turquoise color. The steam coming from the lake is acid. When it combines with air, it ignites. This is visible at night. Sulfur accumulations flare up and illuminate everything around.
Question for you. Does the island of High Brazil sound familiar? You've surely never seen it on a vacation brochure. Not because it's exclusive or hard to reach, but because it's like the ultimate mashup of myth and reality. Some people believe it's just a figment of imagination, while others swear they've seen it with their own two eyes. According to historians, the island of High Brazil has been noted in both travelers' records and ancient Irish legends. It makes this location an Irish version of Atlantis, although it's known by several other names too. The island takes its most famous name from Prehistoric, an important figure in Celtic folklore. It's also been spotted on maps dating back to 1325. One cartographer, for example, placed it west of Ireland, while subsequent sailing charts have shown it more specifically southwest of Galway Bay. Now, here's where things get even weirder. Two people have claimed to have found the island on their separate voyages. They returned home with almost identical descriptions of High Brazil, which they dubbed the Promised Land. A Catalan map from around 1480 also places the island in the southwest of Ireland, confirming a similar location for this mythical place. Now, here's the craziest part of all. High Brazil is said to appear on maps as a perfect circle with a semicircular channel through the center. Two explorers claim they separately walked the shore of the island to determine where it ended, but they never found it. Most likely, looking at those drawings, even if the island ever existed at one point, they were just walking in circles. One of the most famous visits to High Brazil was in 1674 by a British captain named John Nesbitt of Killybegs. He and his crew were in familiar waters west of Ireland when the fog suddenly appeared in their path. When it lifted, they found themselves dangerously close to rocks. The ship anchored nearby, and 4 crew members rowed ashore to visit High Brazil. They spent a whole day there, and even came back with silver and gold given to them by an old man who they claimed lived there. Legend has it that another sighting of this mythical place was several years later, when a fellow claimed to have met an old man who had been there himself. Could he be the same old man from the previous story? Now, this old man remembered spending a couple of days chilling on High Brazil and even seeing on the horizon some familiar places from the west coast of Ireland while walking on its shores. Another man went on a trip in 1872 to find this mysterious island, and he swore he had seen it too. It was right there in front of him. But then, as quick as a wink, it vanished into thin air. Was this island ever real? That's up for debate. We can't deny, though, that there are so many stories and legends about this place that it's hard not to be curious. We've only recently figured out that this next island doesn't exist. Does Sandy Island ring any bells? It's been causing quite a stir since 2012, when it was discovered that the island, which was previously featured on maps, including Google Earth, was just a figment of our collective imagination. People had been searching for this phantom island for years. It was recorded at one point by a British ship way back in 1876, and even appeared on a British map in 1908. Though numerous expeditions had failed to find the island, it remained on some maps until it was finally removed. But how did we finally figure out that Sandy Island was just a myth? Well, a group of scientists from the University of Sydney decided to take matters into their own hands and visually confirm the island's existence. Maybe even take a photo or two while they were there, right? But when they arrived at the supposed location, they found the ocean sitting there all by itself with no piece of land in sight. Most likely the crew of the British ship may have just mistaken a pumice raft for an island. Pumice rafts are floating rocks that form from volcanic activity and are known to float past the area where Sandy Island was supposed to be. Let's move on to this next story about another fictitious island, a tale about a fellow named Robert Perry. You see, back in the day, Perry was trying to gather some money to fund his much-wanted Arctic expedition. So, what does he do? Well, he decides to create a whole new island out of thin air. Talk about creative marketing, or a scam, take your pick. Perry called this mythical island Crockerland, after his pal George Crocker, who had given him some money for one of his previous expeditions. Perry claimed to have discovered this island during his 1906 trip to the Arctic, but it was all a big fib to try and get more investments from his buddy. Perry even went so far as to write a book about his fake discovery called Nearest the Pole. Surprisingly, people did fall for it. Other explorers even started searching for the fictitious island. Despite it never existing at all, Crocker Land appeared on maps created between 1910 and 1913. It was even referred to as a whole continent in some circles. People were so intrigued, they even named it the Lost Atlantis of the North. Eventually, Perry's little scheme was uncovered, and the truth about Crocker Land was revealed. This next mysterious island also seems to enjoy playing hide-and-seek with its visitors. Back in 1821, a man claimed he stumbled upon an island close to Antarctica and decided to give it a special name, Emerald Island, after his ship. But this island seems to have a bit of a quirky personality, as it likes to disappear whenever it feels like it, leaving explorers scratching their heads and wondering if they're losing their marbles. Some people claim they've seen the island with their very own eyes, while others say it's nothing but a myth. Some say it moves around like a sneaky ninja, which is why it's so hard to find. Recollections may vary, sure, but here's where things start to get fishy though. Even those who claim to have seen Emerald Island can't seem to agree on what it looks like. Some tell stories about a towering mountain with cliffs, while others insist it's a lush green forest with rolling hills. One captain even claimed it was small and rocky, with no place to land. Despite all the confusion, there have been a couple of interesting incidents around the supposed location of the island. In 1894, a Norwegian expedition to the South Pole thought they had finally found the elusive island, only to realize it was just an iceberg. In 1949, the crew of a ship from New Zealand got excited when they spotted what they thought was Emerald Island, but it turned out to be a group of clouds hanging out on the water. This next island was supposedly found by a certain Captain Daniel Doherty. He claimed to have stumbled upon an island far south in the Pacific Ocean during a trip from New Zealand to Canada in 1841. He named it Doherty Island, after himself, of course. Several other sailors also claimed to have seen the island, confirming its existence. However, one Captain Scott couldn't find it when he passed by its supposed location in 1904. Did it magically disappear? The icing on the cake came on August 11, 1931, when an Australian newspaper reported that a joint British, Australian, and New Zealand expedition sailing to Antarctica passed by the supposed location of Doherty's Island and couldn't find it. The commanding officer of the ship noted the details of the incident, stating that the vessel passed directly above where the island was said to be. The weather was clear, and there was no island within a considerable radius, so it couldn't have been hiding anywhere else. And, just like that, Doherty Island was removed from British maps in 1937 as if it never existed. Hey, sometime, remind me to tell you the story of Brightside Island, a fanciful place located smack dab in the Internet Ocean.
You're on a ship when you notice some water foaming nearby. It looks as if a huge vessel just sunk there, but you don't see any debris. Steam is rising over the water, and large bubbles appear on the surface. In a couple of minutes, you see a small piece of land appear right in front of your eyes. It's releasing flames and lava. Millions of gallons of water evaporate in the mouth of the volcano. Frightened, you get away from this place. For the next 3 years, the small island covered with volcanoes will slowly be emerging from the water. Every day, it'll erupt and fill the sky with black ash. When the ash settles, it'll get mixed with the water and form the shore. This eruption lasted 3 years, and finally, by 1967, the island of Surtsey on the southern coast of Iceland was fully formed. Surtsey is one of the few islands that have emerged from the depths to the surface of the sea. But it's almost impossible to get here. The island has a unique ecological system, and scientists want to find out how it's going to develop without human influence. Only a few people from all over the world have permission to walk around on the island. For many decades, people's minds have been occupied with the mystery of Easter Island, a remote piece of volcanic soil far away in the Pacific Ocean. But our planet hosts thousands of such lonely islands. What is so peculiar about this one? The mystery is concealed not in the island itself, but giant stone statues covering it. Who created the world-famous huge stone heads? Did they serve any specific purpose? Rapa Nui, which is the name given to Easter Island by its first inhabitants, is the territory of Chile and is situated in the southern Pacific Ocean. And it is so far away that you can easily consider it one of the most distant places on the world map. The only transport that can take you there is a plane. If you want to get to this destination point, you will need to spend 5 hours on board, flying from Santiago to Easter Island. The statues carry the name Moai. They started to be carved at some point between the 13th and 15th centuries. Rapa Nui statues are easily recognized thanks to their peculiar faces. They have long noses, wide chins, rectangular ears, heavy brows, and deeply set eyes. It is quite curious that the nostrils curl in the way fish hooks do. Firstly, people thought that the statues were made up only by their heads. But surprisingly, it turned out that there are full bodies that are attached to the heads. It was discovered during excavations in May 2012. The bodies were just hidden underground. Still, the heads of the statues, visible from the first site, make up 3/8 of each statue's size. As for the arms, they were carved against the bodies, resting in different positions. Most statues, 834 out of 887, were carved from the material called tuff, which is, in fact, compressed volcanic ash. Curiously, all the statues except one faced inland. It means their backs are turned to the ocean. Perhaps the reason for that was the belief that the statues were the protectors of the villagers. That's why they overlooked the settlement. The only statues not fitting into this pattern can be found at Ahu Akivi, a sacred place for the people of Rapa Nui. People keep wondering how the statues of such a huge weight have been distributed all around the island. What's more, in 1722, visitors found a small local population between 1,500 and 3,000 people. How could it correlate with the hundreds of statues on the island? The mystery surrounding the way Rapa Nui people could move the statues challenged the researchers, not letting them back off. In the 1980s, some of them decided to recreate a statue and check the possibility of moving it around. Several decades passed, and another group of American scientists proved that the islanders could tie ropes encircling the huge statues and move them with a walking motion. They backed up their theory with practice, moving a full-size replica using this method. Actually, their idea can explain why Rapa Nui folklore states that the statues were walking with the help of magic. It explains the way the statues were transported to their designated places. Our next stop is Brazil, far from the center of Sao Paulo. That's where you can find an island that's almost impossible to get to, but if you succeed, you're unlikely to leave it. It's called Snake Island. There's no other place on the planet with such a high concentration of snakes. They are the only owners of the island, since no other animals can survive among them. The golden lancehead. They are one of the most venomous species in the world. Their venom is very powerful and fast-acting. If you let this reptile bite a raw piece of meat, the place around the bite will start to melt. Count me out. Imagine you're on this island and the snakes don't bite you. The most interesting thing you can find there is an old lighthouse. It's hidden in the dense foliage of trees. People lived on the island a long time ago. Rumor has it that the last keepers were in the lighthouse when the snakes broke in. No one has lived there ever since. How these unique snakes appeared on the island is still a mystery. The most popular legend claims that a pirate came there a long time ago. He hid a treasure somewhere on the island. Then, he left the snakes in the spot where the chest was hidden. The pirate hoped the reptiles would scare people away from his gold coins and jewelry. Since then, a few snakes have managed to increase their population thousands of times. And some of them, reportedly, are wearing jewelry. No, not really. Even if you wanted to get to the island for some reason, the patrol services would stop you. Only a few people in special protective suits can get there to conduct scientific research. Susie gets here on a small boat. As soon as she steps on the ground, she turns on the live broadcast on her phone. She records dolls hanging on trees all over the island. They have different clothes, different sizes, and faces. There are about a dozen creepy toys on every tree. Rain and hot sun deform the toys' faces. They are covered with moss and greenery and have taken eerily scary forms. There are rumors they come to life at night. Wanna check? One of the subscribers writes, "No problem," Susie agrees. The sun is going down below the horizon. Darkness falls on the forest. Susie is wandering among the trees. The moon lights her way. She makes a fire to get warm. At this moment, she hears a strange sound. She notices some movement out of the corner of her eye. The phone turns off. Susie looks up and sees one of the dolls, lit up by the flames, is turning its head in her direction. Susie screams and runs away from this place. Of course, the doll didn't move. You can notice a little bird sitting behind the toy's head. A few days later, Susie found out that one of the Mexico City locals had moved to the island in the 50s and filled it with toys. He collected dolls from landfills and canals around the island. He spent several days decorating every tree. In the beginning, it looked strange and exciting for tourists. Then, as the dolls began to age and rot, this place became more attractive for people. There are several legends about the reasons for his obsession. Okay, Susie's had enough of these mysteries and creepy places. Now she wants to admire something majestic that was created by nature. She arrives in California's Sequoia National Park, where the most giant trees in the world grow. She's looking with an open mouth at the biggest tree in the world, a giant sequoia. Its name is General Sherman, and it's about 2,000 years old. The volume of this tree is almost half the size of an Olympic swimming pool. Despite its age, it's not the oldest one. There are redwoods in the park that appeared 3,000 years ago. And the tallest tree in the world grows here, in California. It's a redwood that belongs to the sequoia family. It's called Hyperion. This is 1/3 of the Eiffel Tower's height. Just imagine what kind of view you can see from the tree's top. Now Susie is on the island of Madagascar. She's going to see unique baobab trees. They look like something has ripped them out of the ground, turned them upside down, and shoved them back in. Baobabs are some of the most beautiful trees in the world. Most of them are here in the Alley of Baobabs, but you can also find them in Australia and South Africa. Their tree trunks resemble sponges. They expand and absorb moisture during the rainy season. Elephants like to drink it. They tear off and chew the trunk's parts to quench their thirst. At night, flowers bloom on the baobabs. They smell like sour milk and attract bats. But the most interesting thing is that the baobab doesn't dry out and doesn't fall like other trees after the end of its life. It crumbles, settles, and leaves a pile of pieces on the ground.
The Amazon River, the boat, and dense jungle on both sides. All is silent. Only the engine is revving, and you look around nervously under the earnest gaze of the Peruvian guide. Suddenly, the man smiles and points ahead. This is it. You've finally arrived at Iquitos. The city is hidden deep within the Amazon rainforest. On one side, Iquitos is surrounded by water, and on the other lies thick, impenetrable rainforest as far as the eye can see, making this city extremely difficult to reach. First, you had to fly to Peru's capital, Lima, a vibrant coastal city. From there, you traveled by bus through Peru's vast jagged mountains before being plunged into the heart of the Amazon rainforest. 3 days into this bus journey, you reached a small town where the road suddenly stopped. At over 140 square miles, Iquitos is the largest continental city in the world that cannot be reached by road. You're still over 200 miles away from Iquitos, so from here you take a boat ride along the hot, humid Amazon River before finally reaching the remote city 5 days after you left Lima. When you arrive in the city, you notice many of the houses are built on tall stilts. This is because, in the springtime, the river surrounding Iquitos swells up, submerging parts of the city in water. For this, Iquitos has been nicknamed the Venice of the Amazon. The stilted houses are tall enough to avoid the murky waters of the Amazon River. You hear loud buzzing coming from all around the city. It sounds like a gang of bikers have arrived. In reality, these are motocarrios. There are very few cars in Iquitos. Instead, they have motorcycles with small passenger cabins attached to them. There are around 45,000 of these things whizzing around Iquitos, making the city very noisy. Your trip to the most isolated places has just begun. So, you head to Norway and arrive in the capital city Oslo. Immediately, you hop on another plane. After a 3-hour flight, you land at the world's northernmost public airport, Longyearbyen. You step off the plane to see a small and colorful town enclosed by snow-topped mountains. There's no settlement further to the north than this. Longyearbyen translates to the Long Year Town, named after its American founder, coal miner John Longyear. You take a walk along the coast of the small town. The water is a beautiful crystal blue. You decide to dip your toe in to test it out. Ow! Bad idea. The average temperature of the water here is 32 degrees, making it ice cold. In the distance, you can make out a fuzzy white creature. It's a polar bear. In fact, it's a group of them. In Longyearbyen, polar bears famously outnumber humans. Around 3,000 of these animals populate the area compared to the human population of 2,300. Finally, the sun sets. You grab a blanket and sit back to take in the stunning view of the northern lights. Now, imagine you're walking in the scorching heat across Egypt's Great Sand Sea. You've been walking for miles, hours, days even, dreaming of water, greenery, and a place to rest, when suddenly you come across a small settlement with olive groves, palm trees, and even freshwater springs. This isn't a heat-induced mirage. It's the Siwa Oasis, an Egyptian city of 23,000 people and a miracle of nature. You travel here by flying to Egypt's capital, Cairo, and then embarking on a lengthy and desolate bus ride across the desert. When you finally spot some greenery amongst the sand, you have reached the Siwa Oasis. After refreshing yourself in the cool waters of the springs, you explore the city further and come across ancient ruins. This city has existed since 10,000 BCE, and many historical remnants can still be found there today. Amongst these ruins, you notice there are newer buildings. These are where the modern-day Siwi people live. You spend some time with the Siwi, a friendly and unique community of Egyptians. They tell you all about their city. The Siwa Oasis is located in the middle of the Sahara Desert, and due to its harsh climate, it's one of the most remote cities in the world. You notice how dry the air is and how scorching the sun feels. Reaching highs of 118 degrees Fahrenheit, this heat makes the Siwa Oasis a difficult place to live. It's time to travel to a more balanced climate. You head northeast and arrive in Russia's capital, Moscow. From there, you take a flight east again, traveling further and further across Russia until you're closer to Alaska than to Moscow. You've reached the city of Petropavlovsk, which translates to City of Peter and Paul. The first thing you see are giant mountains surrounding the city, cutting it off from the rest of the world. These mountains are in fact volcanoes. In this far eastern part of Russia, there are more than 300 volcanoes, including 29 active ones. These volcanoes stop any roads from reaching Petropavlovsk. The city depends on flights and boats to import supplies. You turn away from the volcanoes to stare out at the blue, shimmering ocean. The water looks nice, so you head down to the beach where a crowd of sea lions are sunbathing along the sand. Petropavlovsk is home to incredibly diverse wildlife. Just off the shore, you can see a whale fin poking out of the water. You explore the city's diverse landscape. You go to one of the city's ski resorts and spend the day on the slopes. Then you hike up a rocky path to the base of one of the city's many volcanoes. Finally, it's time to relax on a boat tour around the island to see the city's famous Three Brothers rock formation. Feeling inspired, you travel to another volcanic land, Chile's Easter Island. The island doesn't have a harbor and only one airline flies to the remote land, so you travel an entire day to Santiago, Chile. Then you climb aboard a small plane to fly to Easter Island. You walk among the high cliffs of the barren island and come across its famous monuments. These are giant, mysterious statues of human heads. They're called moai and were carved by the local people around 800 years ago. You inspect the earth beneath your feet. It looks and feels very dry. Easter Island consists of 3 ancient volcanoes. The volcanic soil makes it very difficult to grow crops or vegetation. Some of the city's trees were cleared hundreds of years ago to make way for the stone monuments, giving the island the empty look it has today. You embark on a boat ride 1,100 miles west from Easter Island. You reach a small green land floating in the Pacific Ocean. This is Pitcairn Island. You might recall that this place played a major role in the mutiny on the Bounty. You come down from the boat and begin your journey to reach Adamstown, the center of the island where its 43 inhabitants live. To reach Adamstown, you hike the Hill of Difficulty, a steep and rocky 200-foot climb to the top of the island. Now that you've finally made it here, you can explore the diverse and unique nature of the land. Pitcairn Island is home to the largest marine reserve in the world. You take a snorkeling trip and swim alongside all kinds of exotic fish. You explore vibrant coral reefs and even catch sight of a rare humpback whale. Dreaming of the great days of the old Wild West, you decide to travel to Supai, Arizona. To get to this Native American settlement and fragment of the past, you drive along America's famous Route 66. You stop, seemingly in the middle of nowhere with only desert land as far as the eye can see. Then you follow an 8-mile walking trail to reach Supai. You hike down into the Grand Canyon, almost 3,000 feet deep. You come across a stunning waterfall spilling over the cliffs of the canyon. This is Havasu Falls, a popular tourist spot famous for its vivid blue-green water. After a further mile's hike, you finally reach Supai. Over 200 members of the Havasupai Indian tribe reside in the small town. It's often referred to as the most remote town in the United States. To your left, you see several mules making their way across town with packages on their backs. Because no roads lead to this small settlement, mail is delivered by a mule train. Without it, it would take the average mail carrier a 16-hour hike to complete this route. You walk around the area and come across many more towering blue waterfalls. The untouched nature and great views of the Grand Canyon make the long hike worthwhile. After a beautiful sunset, nighttime falls, and there are no lights for miles. The land is lit up by the countless stars shining overhead. Do you know how many continents there are on Earth? That's an easy one, 7. But wait a second, aren't Europe and Asia one large continent, Eurasia? It looks so when you look at the world map. Well, scientists think differently. They don't just look at bodies of land sticking out of the sea. Geoscientists study the types of rock that continents are made from. When you see the world from their perspective, the number of continents actually increases. Yes, they are not a myth. Lost continents exist, or at least they used to. They are hiding under other land masses. Peekaboo! Researchers have recently discovered one continent just like that. It's called Greater Adria. Sound familiar? Yes, it has something to do with the Adriatic Sea. This lost continent is completely buried under Europe. It collided with Europe and started to sink under it a long time ago. Today, it lies beneath Italy, Greece, and the Baltics. Its size and even shape match that of Greenland, the world's largest island. But how did geoscientists find Greater Adria? It's no longer visible, but it left some clues. Parts of it were embedded in the Alps. Other chunks were incorporated into present-day Italy and Croatia, on the other side of the Adriatic Sea. Limestone rocks from the former continent started to change once they were under the European landmass. Tremendous heat and pressure spread over tens of millions of years changed their structure. Out goes the limestone, in comes the marble. All the Greek and Roman temples you admired on your summer vacation were constructed using this marble. It was sort of a going-away gift from a long-lost continent. Greater Adria camouflaged itself well for thousands of years, but other lost continents were hiding in plain sight. Have you heard of Earth's 8th continent, Zealandia? Probably not, because it sits under the surface of the Pacific Ocean. 95% of Zealandia is now underwater. Can you guess where exactly? Its name is a good hint – under New Zealand. If you open Google Maps, you can see its outline. Look for a lighter shade of blue in the ocean. It should stretch from New Caledonia to New Zealand. This bump in the ocean floor used to be above sea level. It was about 2/3 of Australia and more than twice the landmass of Greater Adria in size. We can spot Zealandia today because it hasn't sunk too low, and that's the best way to discover other lost continents. Imagine the Earth without the oceans. The bottom of the sea isn't flat. There are mountains and trenches. You could put Mount Everest in the deepest of them, and there would still be 7,000 feet between it and sea level. This trench got so deep because of a geological process called subduction. The Pacific Plate got under the Philippine Plate. Earth's crust is made out of those plates that float in a sea of molten rock. Then they bump into each other, one goes down while the other one rises. That's how Greater Adria ended up under the European continent. Our planet is constantly on the go. We don't notice this process because it happens deep beneath our feet. 120 million years ago, Australia and Antarctica were a single piece of land. Yep, the coldest and one of the hottest places on Earth were once the same territory. Antarctica said goodbye to Australia, but it didn't leave empty-handed. Today, there is an oceanic plateau in the Indian Ocean. The word plateau comes from French, and it means elevated flatland. And the name of this land sounds like the title of a Hollywood movie, Broken Ridge. Long ago, it was connected to another lost continent. Scientists believe that it made a land bridge between India and Antarctica. What was this land like? The answer possibly lies in a tiny archipelago in the southern Indian Ocean. These islands are all that is left of an ancient landmass. They have a cold climate. The islands feature glaciers because they're so close to Antarctica. But in the past, the climate must have been temperate with plenty of rainfall. The animals and plants would have been similar to those that we find in tropical regions today. The lost continent's landscape probably resembled that of New Zealand. Now, while we're in the area, can you guess which continent the island state of Madagascar once belonged to? If you guessed Africa, sorry, you were wrong. Hey, don't feel bad. Look up and to the right of the map. The correct answer is India. Some 120 million years ago, I wasn't around then, India separated from the African continent and went northeast. Madagascar wasn't quick enough and ended up as an island off the southeast coast of Africa. But there is evidence of an even greater landmass, the lost continent of Mauritius. Scientists found traces of the ancient landmass under the island of Mauritius. Today, it's a tourist hotspot, but millions of years ago, it was a real hotspot, volcanoes and all. That's how scientists were able to retrace the steps of Mauritius. They found a mineral that exists in rocks which lava spews out after an eruption. The long-lost land once covered the area from Mauritius to the west coast of India. Imagine if that land existed today. It would form a great mix of Indian and African cultures. The local dishes would definitely be spicy. Now, speaking of spicy, have you had Indonesian food recently? Just 50,000 years ago, Southeast Asia looked much different. There was no Sumatra, Borneo, Java, or even Australia. Just Sunda and Saul, two continental masses that were divided by a deep water trench. You had the extension of mainland Southeast Asia on one side and the Greater Australia on the other. Back then, Bali stood at the southernmost tip of Asia. Biologists were among the first scientists to notice the split. Species developed differently on Sunda and Sahul. That's why Australia has unique animals, such as the kangaroo, wombat, and platypus. And did you know that a giant kangaroo once roamed the island of New Guinea? That's because, up until the end of the last age, there was a land bridge to Australia. Today, the two islands are separated by the Torres Strait, but it's quite shallow, less than 65 feet. It's a reminder that this was once a single landmass called Saul. Another ocean strait that isn't too deep separates Asia from North America. The Bering Strait sits today in the place of Beringia. This ancient landmass wasn't that big. It stretched 1,000 miles from north to south. That's just a third of the driving distance from Los Angeles to New York. Beringia was important for another reason. During the Ice Ages, it connected the whole world. Water levels were 300 feet lower than they are today. If they went even lower, you could walk from the Cape of Good Hope in Africa all the way to Cape Horn in South America. Talk about the ultimate backpacking route. Today, you can hop on an airplane and fly to pretty much any place on the globe. The world has never seemed smaller, has it? Well, it has. Some 300 to 200 million years ago, we were all one world, literally. Pangaea was a supercontinent that included all of the continents. Its name is in Greek, and it simply means all Earth. But Pangaea started to crack up. The biggest gap formed between the Americas on one side and Europe and Africa on the other. Seawater soon started pouring in, and that's how we got the Atlantic Ocean. This process is by no means over. While you are watching this video, North America is drifting further and further away from Europe at the rate of 1 inch per year. Doesn't seem much when compared to the average human lifespan, but in the end, all the continents will reconnect with each other, forming a supercontinent. And it wouldn't be the first time in Earth history that this happened.